Hello friends. Welcome to Fictional Vortex. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting series on what if Naruto had the shadow bloodline with powerful Sharingans. Also be sure to subscribe and like this video. Now let's begin. Are you sure he can be saved? Asked a distressed Nara Yoshino, struggling on the maternity bed amidst a flurry of midwives and doctors in the Nara compound. I reassured her with a smile as I prepared the materials for the seal. This was going to be a tough challenge. Even from this distance, I could sense the immense imbalance of the monstrous chakra emanating from the unborn child. Even Kyuubi, residing within me, couldn't help but sneer. That thing is a monstrosity, even by my standards. It's probably best to let nature take its course and not let it live. The Kyuubi snorted inside my head. Shut up, Databane. It's just a baby, for the sage's sake. I can't bear to see the look on the mother's face right now. Her pleading is too much for me to ignore, I retorted sharply to the spiteful fox. You've been warned, brat. Mark my words, that thing will destroy us all. Humans aren't supposed to possess such an enormous amount of chakra at birth, not to mention the repulsive sensation of that chakra. Blech. It feels like a void, dark and repugnant, as if it will consume everything. The Kyuubi shuddered as it described the chakra. I couldn't deny the truth in Kyuubi's words. Being a Jinchuriki and an Uzumaki, I possessed the ability to sense emotions and perceive the nature of chakra. And honestly, the chakra emanating from the baby scared me a bit, even making me feel nauseous. I kept telling myself that it was nothing more than the Nara clan's inherent affinity to the yin aspect of the chakra spectrum. Just the baby's being too extreme on that spectrum. Databane. It doesn't matter. It's just a baby, and with my sealing abilities, I can contain his chakra and help him balance his yin and yang natures. Databane, I reassured Kyuubi. Kyuubi remained silent, snorting before closing its eyes and cutting off all communications. I sighed and couldn't help but wish that Minato was here instead of being far away on the battlefield. The Third Great Ninja War was still raging, and he had to be there with his team. Taking a deep breath, I brushed the last few strokes in the scroll I was writing on, completing one of the most obscure seals we Uzumakis ever created, the Triquetra Circle Seal. It was a seal meant to protect, unite, and endure. The perfect seal to shield the baby and unify his monstrous chakra, keeping him alive. I felt a sense of pride in my work, but I knew this wasn't the time to bask in self-importance. Databane. Shikaku, I've finished the seal. I can apply it to the baby as soon as he's born, I informed the worried father. I thank you, Kushina. I truly hope this can save our baby, he replied with a strained smile, his gaze fixed on his laboring wife with deep concern. Everyone in the room sprang into action as the labor process extended far longer than a normal delivery, increasing the intensity and focus of the medical ninjas and midwives. They were stressed, but determined to bring the Nara clan's heir into the world. After 4 grueling hours of struggle and nerve-wracking anticipation, the baby took his first breath, signaling his arrival into the world. As he did, everyone felt an immense pressure emanating from the sickening yin chakra enveloping the boy, almost like protective armor. The baby's heartbeat resonated audibly, resembling the rhythmic strike of a drum. Standing there, I was stunned by the flow of chakra I could sense. The new parents, consumed by worry, urgently requested my assistance. Please, Kushina, use the seal, they implored. I nodded solemnly, calming my mind as I prepared the seal. However, Yoshino couldn't help but ask, her voice filled with concern, will the seal be visible on my boy? Is there no other way to apply it? I don't want him to bear the stigma of the seal on his body. Her plea struck a chord with me. I understood her perspective, as my own seal had left its mark on me. It was only because I had Minato as my partner that I had no reservations or worries about my seal. But if that wasn't the case, I dread the idea of how insecure I would have been with others. I nodded and gently reassured her, yes, it's possible to attach the seal to an item and place it on the baby. However, that item must always remain in contact with him, I emphasized the last part. Yoshino visibly relaxed, casting a grateful glance at Shikaku, who understood her unspoken request. He retrieved a small jewelry box and opened it, revealing a pair of earrings. A similar pair adorned Shikaku's own ears. He explained, my father gave me this pair when I became a genin, just as his father gave it to him. I had intended to pass them on to my heir when he reached that milestone, but this seems like an opportune moment. With those words, he handed me the pair of earrings, and I took one, as only one was needed for the seal to take effect. Focused and careful, I placed the triquetra circle seal on the earring. Success! Excitement filled me as I gently placed the earring on the baby's right ear. Though his volatile chakra made it challenging to approach him, somehow, Yoshino's soothing words coaxed him into relaxation, allowing me to secure the earring in place. Huh? I suppose what they say about a mother's love is true. A smile spread across my face as I witnessed the seal taking effect, observing how the chakra flowed through it, being stored away while his yin aspect was calmed and gradually balanced. With each passing moment, the oppressive atmosphere that had gripped us faded away, revealing a beautiful little baby boy to everyone. He had a small tuft of raven black hair atop his head and the most adorable little nose. One could hardly believe he was the same intense ball of chakra from moments ago. Databane. However, I could still sense that the chakra coursing through him far exceeded what any normal baby should possess. Even now, with the seal in place, he held as much chakra as I did when I first unlocked my own. That only hinted at the vast amount of chakra he naturally possessed, even without the seal. I playfully booped his nose, causing him to squirm and attempt to protest with his tiny hands. He was absolutely adorable. But I noticed something peculiar: he didn't cry. Hey, is this normal? Why isn't he crying? I inquired nervously, but the others didn't seem all that surprised. Shikaku appeared somewhat embarrassed as he responded, well, most Nara kids are too lazy to cry. His words elicited a burst of laughter from everyone present. Truly, this clan remained as lazy as ever. But the parents didn't mind at all. They were overjoyed to have their little bundle of joy alive and cradled in their arms. With a content smile, I decided to leave the happy family in peace, making my way out alongside the other extra personnel. Just then, an Anbu member donning a bear mask approached me and relayed that the Hokage wished to receive a report. Letting out a weary sigh, I resolved to pay a visit to the old man. After all, he had sent a full squad of Anbu to ensure the baby's protection, just in case. The situation regarding the little Nara heir was special, and needed to remain known only to the clan, the Hokage's personal physicians, myself, and of course, the Hokage himself. He seemed insistent on keeping it that way, even from the other village elders. Frankly, I preferred it that way too. I didn't trust those old goons one bit. Databane. Casting one last fond gaze at the Nara compound, a smile tugging at my lips as I recalled the image of the chubby baby, I couldn't help but hope that one day I would have a child even more adorable than him. Databane. Well, if my child inherits Minato's handsome face and gentle temper, along with my luscious red hair and und, that would undoubtedly make them incredibly adorable, wouldn't it? But hold on a second. What if they end up with my face and my temper instead? The mere thought sent a shiver down my spine, prompting me to fervently pray to the sage, pleading for that particular scenario to never come to pass. Well, now I was left with the prospect of engaging in a rather mundane conversation with the old man Hokage. Sigh. As I made my way toward the Hokage tower, I thought I caught a snippet of Kyuubi's murmurs. It sounded something like, "Sage, save us all." I observed a group of 10 or so children from the Ino-Shikacho alliance playing happily in the park, while the adults engaged in casual conversations. It had become a tradition for our alliance to gather here every weekend, not only for socializing but also to foster early friendships among the young ones. We understood the importance of cultivating these connections from an early age, knowing that it would benefit them in the future. Although our three clans may be smaller compared to renowned families like the Uchiha or Hyuga, our collective strength surpassed that of any individual clan. That's precisely why the Ino-Shikacho alliance carried such significance within the village. It was through events like this that a sense of belonging and familiarity was instilled, creating a bond that would withstand the test of time. However, my attention shifted to the figure beside me, where Shikakuro lay sprawled out under the shade of a tree, his gaze fixated on a bird's nest above. A sigh escaped my lips. Yes, it was true that we Nara had a reputation for our laziness. But there was more to it than that. I glanced toward the playground, where 3 of the Nara children were at least attempting to keep up with their peers. And then, there was Shikakuro. "You should go and make some friends, Kuro," I urged, attempting to nudge him out of his comfort zone. "What's the point? They're just a bunch of dumb kids running around and getting dirty. If I get dirty, Mom will scold me," he replied nonchalantly. I let out another sigh, realizing that my son was a true Nara through and through. He had inherited not only our family's laziness but also our intelligence. But how can you be so certain that your mom will scold you for getting your clothes dirty? It's your first day here, I reasoned with him. I watched Shikagi's mom scolding him when he came back with dirty clothes, so I made a logical conclusion. And I stand by my opinion. Those kids look dumb. I don't want to go there, and running around like that seems like way too much work, he replied, punctuating his statement with a yawn. I sighed softly, realizing that persuading Shikakuro to join in on the fun would be a task in itself. Nevertheless, as a parent, I couldn't help but hope that he would eventually discover the joys of friendship and playfulness. Perhaps, in time, he would understand that getting a little dirty was sometimes worth it for the sake of building meaningful connections. Was raising a child always this difficult? I couldn't help but ponder. Parenting certainly came with its own set of challenges. However, his behavior couldn't be tolerated. It was crucial for him to interact with the other children from the Alliance, especially his own clan cousins. With a firm voice, I told him, "You still need to go and mingle with the other kids, and don't worry about your mom's scolding, I will handle it." He looked at me, annoyance evident in his eyes, and argued in his baby voice, "Why are you so insistent on me playing with them? Can't I just relax here and watch the birds?" "Because I said so, and also because you are the heir to the Nara clan," I replied, emphasizing the importance of his future role. "One day, you will lead the clan, and for that, you need to know your own people and your allies." I pointed towards the children playing nearby and continued, "Those kids are around your age, and they will be your allies and companions in the future when you become a ninja. If you don't know them, or if they don't know you, how will you lead them? Once you get to know one another, you will build trust, and that trust will be invaluable in times of need. They will watch your back and help you on a rainy day." Knowing that he wasn't your typical child, I tried to appeal to his sense of reason. He stared at me, appearing bored for a few seconds, before seemingly contemplating my words. Finally, he nodded and responded, UMU, I understand what you mean, Dad. Essentially, you're telling me that I need to gather my minions since I'll be the leader. The earlier, the better. If I have good minions, I'll have less work to do. That means more time to relax. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, I will go conquer them." My jaw dropped as he left me dumbfounded and made his way towards the other kids. Facepalming at the audacity of my 3-year-old, I couldn't help but listen as he climbed the jungle gym and addressed the group of older children with an adorable glare. "Listen up. I am Nara Shikakuro, the heir to the Nara clan. You know what that means?" he declared with surprising confidence. The kids, taken aback by his assertiveness, shook their heads in response. Even the Nara kids seemed stunned as they witnessed their young master addressing them from above. Most of the children were between 3 and 5 years old, and while kids grew up quickly, a 5-year-old wasn't typically known for their profound intellect. "Sigh, you guys have so much to learn," Kuro said, channeling his inner old man. He pointed towards the eldest Yamanaka child and asked, "Oi, what's your name?" The shy boy stammered, I am Yamanaka Inodai. Nice to meet you, Shikakuro-kun." Kuro nodded sagely and continued, "Good introduction, Inodai. Everyone, clap for Inodai." The other kids, unaware of what was happening, obediently clapped, causing Inodai to blush. Now, Kuro pointed at Inodai. "Tell me, Inodai, which alliance is your Yamanaka clan a part of?" With newfound confidence, Inodai answered, "The Ino-Shika-cho alliance." "Excellent answer. Good job, Inodai." Kuro praised him once again, leading the other kids to clap once more. Next, Kuro singled out an Akamichi child and asked, "And what's your name, little sister?" His smile widened as he interacted with the other kids. I facepalmed from my spot, realizing that Kuro was the youngest one present. The other parents found his performance cute and chatted among themselves. Although they didn't approach me as the Nara clan head, they smiled and nodded when our eyes met. Sighing, I continued to observe Kuro's antics. "I am Akamichi Chomi." "Hi, Shikakuro Nisan," the outgoing girl introduced herself. Kuro nodded and asked her with a smile, "Tell me, Chomi-chan, what does an alliance do?" She pondered for a moment before uncertainty replying, Make friends and eat together." The adults smiled from afar at her innocent answer, and Kuro's eyes gleamed with excitement as he grinned mischievously. I had a bad feeling about this. Yes, great answer, little sister. We, as an alliance, need to be friends and have good relations with one another. Yes, also to eat together. But that alone is not enough, Kuro stated, his gaze shifting towards one of the Nara children, whom I recognized as Shikaba's child. Shikaichi, tell me, what does every strong alliance need? Kuro asked, his small grin giving away his ulterior motive. The clever child seemed to catch on, finally understanding the purpose behind all this. A strong alliance needs strong leaders, Kuro-sama, Shikaichi answered, bowing slightly. Kuro's adorable face took on an almost evil smile as he spread his arms and addressed everyone with a loud voice. Hear that, friends? We are an alliance, and we need to be strong, and for that, we need a leader. And who will be that leader? He asked, his words resonating with confidence. The Nara kids had already caught on, so they remained silent, stared at Kuro as if he was the coolest kid they had ever witnessed. The burden of a leader is huge, as they need to guide all of their friends forward. But fear not, I will take on this challenging task for you. I will lead our alliance to victory. Who's with me? Kuro's enthusiasm reached new heights, his voice carrying an infectious energy that even I didn't know he possessed. The kids, being kids, were swept away by his fervor and cheered in support. The other adults found it endearing, albeit slightly wary, but as they were already a part of the alliance, they saw the value in having someone with the mentality to lead. They clapped from the sidelines and congratulated Kuro on becoming the leader of the kids. Kuro nodded in acknowledgement to the adults before returning to me, wearing a smug smile. It both irritated and impressed me as he said, "Well, mission complete, respect earned. Now let me relax, that was some heavy work right there." I sighed and lay down on the grass next to my son. Observing him, I noticed that he was truly at peace, as if he had no thoughts occupying his mind. My wife often says to me, "A Nara without thought is a dead Nara." Our great intellect makes it challenging for us to truly relax, as there's always something on our minds. But here was Kuro, simply enjoying the serenity of the wind. I chuckled softly and gazed at the sky, watching the clouds float by. I wish we could achieve true peace one day, just like the clouds, I murmured before closing my eyes. Might as well rest while I can. August 30th, year 63, a banyan tree beside training ground 23, Konohagakure. I glanced around once more, making sure I was still alone in my secluded spot beneath Beni. Oh, Beni is the name of the massive banyan tree in the 23rd training ground. With a lazy sigh, I stretched out and settled into a comfortable position. Peering up through the canopy of leaves, I watched as specks of light filtered through the small gaps, casting a gentle glow on my face. My mind wandered back to the peculiar circumstances of my new life. Can you believe it? Reincarnated in the Naruto world of all places? All I wanted was some peace and quiet after death, but no, did the gods listen to my plea? They just had to throw me into this chaotic realm where people learn to throw shurikens before they learn to tie their shoelaces. Sigh, well, at least I lucked out being born into the Nara clan. With that as my cover, I can embrace the art of laziness like never before. Finally, I have a chance at the relaxed life I've always craved. I mean, in my previous life, I busted my hump day in and day out just to scrape together enough money for the future. All I wanted was to retire and enjoy some well-deserved relaxation. But did that ever happen? Nope. Instead, I ended up sick from overworking, my health took a nosedive, and eventually, I kicked the bucket. Not a single moment of true relaxation in my entire life. But this time, things will be different. In this life, I've got a strong family, rich vaults, and some dependable minions who are more than happy to do my bidding. And to top it off, it seems I've been blessed with an absurd amount of chakra. Although, there's more to it than meets the eye. You see, I've got this mysterious seal on my ears, and my parents refuse to spill the beans. So troublesome. I've come up with a couple of theories too. Either I'm some kind of Jinchuriki, which seems highly unlikely, or my chakra reserves are so massive that my body would spontaneously combust if left unchecked. I'm leaning towards the latter, but deep down, I sense there's something more to the story. To my surprise, I found solace in the embrace of darkness. With my rebirth and heightened intelligence, I initially thought that I might possess some sort of power related to darkness. It would have been pretty cool, you know. But after conducting a few experiments, it became apparent that darkness manipulation wasn't really it. It was more just shadows, instead of the whole darkness thing. During the rare lectures that my mom managed to trap me in, I discovered that my inclination leaned more towards the yin nature. In simple terms, it's the aspect of chakra associated with imagination and spirituality. Yin release is all about giving shape to the intangible, using spiritual chakra to manifest illusions and such. It's the cornerstone of genjutsu, and our clan's secret techniques rely heavily on yin release. As a Nara, I'm naturally predisposed towards the yin nature of the chakra spectrum. But this felt different somehow. Well, whatever it was, I couldn't be bothered to dwell on it. It's much more appealing to just let go and relax. With a casual shrug, I closed my eyes and allowed the darkness to envelop me. The shadows cast by the tree seemed to wrap around me like a protective shield, easing my mind and lulling me into a peaceful slumber. I let myself drift away, surrendering to the tranquility of sleep for a few blissful hours. As I awakened, the sun had already started moving towards the west, signaling that it was already afternoon. With a sigh, I sat up and took in the serene sounds of nature. My gaze shifted to the left, where a family of rabbits hopped around, their playful antics bringing a smile to my face. Thoughts of my new family naturally flooded my mind. You know, I don't have some tragic orphan backstory from my past life. When it came to family, things were pretty normal. I had a hard-working father who gradually grew distant over time, not because of any conflicts or disagreements, but just as it often happens in Asian families. And then there was my affectionate yet overbearing mother, constantly pestering me about how I should live my life well into my early 30s, ha ha ha. So, yeah, I can say that I had a decent family life in my previous existence. I wasn't really longing for a family when I was reborn. But the Naras were a welcoming sight nonetheless. Nara Yoshino, my new birth mother, is both affectionate and strict, much like my previous life's mother. As for my new father, he's mostly out in the field due to the ongoing war. Although he mentioned in his letter that he managed to secure special permission to be home today, so he should be returning soon. He tries to be a role model, but let's be real, I've witnessed him cowering in front of my mom enough times to know who wears the pants in this household. Ha ha ha. My days have been pretty alright. Apart from dodging my tutors and their boring lectures on important village knowledge and ninja theories, and putting on a perfect little angel act in front of my mother to avoid getting beaten to a pulp, I've been enjoying my time exploring the village and leading my cute little group of minions. And, of course, taking care of the deer in the Nara forest. Sigh. For now, life has been quite relaxed. I managed to gather some information about the timeline. The Third Great Ninja War is still ongoing, and there's no fourth face on the Hokage wall yet. So, I'm pretty sure this is all happening before the incident with the 9 tails. Which is all well and good, I suppose. Not like I can do much about it anyway. Sigh. I should at least try to do something, I guess. Such a drag. With a resigned sigh, I decided it was time to get up and head back home. I had a feeling they'd send people out to search for me if I lingered any longer on a day like this. Time to face the music, I suppose. I leapt gracefully, allowing the shadows to guide me through the forest, swiftly navigating the fastest route. I had to admit, the shadows were undeniably useful. Even though I had no aspirations of becoming the greatest Hokage or ninja master or whatever, it was nice to know that I wasn't some mediocre loser. It didn't take long for me to reach the compound, where I spotted the 2 guards lazily acknowledging my presence. Kuro-sama, Yoshino-sama was looking for you, one of them said, Nankar with his pinky. As soon as I heard those words, every hair on my body stood on end, and I hurried towards the source of my mother's call. And as I feared, there she was, looking like a demon incarnate, while my father desperately tried to calm her down. I took a deep gulp and entered, performing a ninja salute. You called for me, Your Highness Oka-sama. I, your dutiful child, have arrived with utmost haste. At the sight of my entrance, my father let out a sigh of relief, attempting to make himself as inconspicuous as possible to avoid any further trouble, while my mother's glare pierced through me. It was almost as if my shadows themselves were ready to emerge and shield me, but they seemed to possess the ability to distinguish between friend and foe. Or perhaps it was just my instinct at play. Or maybe it was the shared innate fear my shadows and I had of my mother. My mother approached me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes as she crouched down to my eye level. So, my darling Kuro-chan, where have you been all day? she asked, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness. In response, I put on my best innocent boy act, an Oscar-worthy performance. However, instead of earning me praise, it only resulted in my ears being firmly pulled and twisted. Ouch! That hurt like a bitch. Enough with your excuses, she shouted. But I haven't even made any excuses yet. I already heard from Toru-san that you somehow managed to escape his history lessons, and you even had the audacity to skip Grandma Sumayor's etiquette lessons. Is this how a future clan heir is supposed to behave? Ouch, Mom, I'm sorry. I just went to meet my friends. Yeah, that's it. I went to meet my friends because they really wanted to see me, I replied, mustering the utmost conviction in my voice. Sorry, my minions, but your leader's precious ears must be preserved at all costs. So, you were with your little friends, were you? My mother's smile widened, if that was even possible, and a chill ran down my spine. She opened the sliding door, revealing the inner courtyard adorned with various decorations, and my friends were running around, attempting to assist the adults with the preparations. I gulped. So, which friends were you with, my dear Kuro-chan? Well, I guess I had this one coming. Mother escorted me back to my room and gave me a thorough earful instead of the usual beating, considering it was my special day. She warned me that next time she would hang me upside down over the pond if I dared to skip another lesson. Although I was pretty sure she was just kidding, I hope, maybe? Anyway, after the customary scolding session, my mother got me ready and took me to where everyone was eagerly waiting to wish me a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Kuro-san, Kun, Sama, Nichan, everyone chimed as I blew out the candles. You know, whatever I may have said about wishing for death and eternal rest, well, I still wouldn't mind having that. But truth be told, this warm feeling from my family and friends, I wouldn't mind experiencing it a while longer. Huh? Wait. Would that count as a birthday wish? No, I take it back. Give me uber awesome sage powers instead, so I can continue to laze around as much as I want. You are allowed to only make one birthday wish, Kuro, said my dad, who had a smirk on his face. Was I that easy to read? Damn it, what a drag, Lumi. Well, that was a glimpse into a slice of life of our poor Kuro-kun. Stay tuned to learn more of our little MC and how he interacts with more people, and slowly uncover the secrets of his powers. December 6th, year 63, Uchiha compound. I stood on the side of the street, surrounded by a somber crowd as injured and deceased ninjas were brought into the village from the gates. The sight was a haunting reminder of the horrors of war, and I couldn't help but clench my fists in frustration. Some of the ninjas struggled for breath, their life force slipping away, while others lay motionless, forever still. Tears flowed freely from the women and children, their cries of anguish piercing the air as they recognized familiar faces among the casualties. The men, their expressions filled with a mix of sorrow and resignation, could only offer prayers and pay their respects to those who had given everything to protect our village. I turned my gaze to the right, where my father stood tall and strong, his face cold yet resolute. Sensing my eyes upon him, he cast a sidelong glance in my direction and spoke with a firm tone. Izuna, this is the reality of war. The weak perish while the strong survive. As the strongest clan in the village, it is our duty as Uchiha to protect the weak. You must become strong to do your duty. I didn't entirely agree with my father's perspective, but I nodded in acknowledgement nonetheless. Deep within me, a question lingered. Did all this pain and destruction truly serve a purpose? Couldn't we find a way to achieve peace and live together in harmony instead? I wondered if there was a path to peace that I could discover. Would becoming stronger truly allow me to put an end to wars? The answers eluded me, but one thing was certain: I needed to dedicate myself to rigorous practice and honing my skills. Only by becoming stronger and learning more could I hope to make a difference. It had been a week since that fateful day, and despite my best efforts, I found it difficult to immerse myself in training. Every time I attempted to throw a kunai, a wave of hesitation washed over me, and the haunting images of the pained faces of the ninjas flashed through my mind. It felt as though by throwing the kunai, I would somehow be responsible for their deaths. The weight of these thoughts was suffocating, so I sought solace and guidance from my mother. She was always a source of comfort and wisdom in times of turmoil. As I poured my heart out to her, she listened attentively and then offered her simple yet profound advice. Izuna-chan, you are just a little girl, too young to carry the weight of such burdens. If these thoughts trouble you, perhaps it would be best to take a break from your training. Explore the village, find a quiet spot where you can relax and clear your mind. You shouldn't be so serious at such a tender age, or else your cute face might become stiff. I couldn't quite grasp the connection between the seriousness of my thoughts and the stiffness of my face, but I trusted my mother's words nonetheless. Taking her advice to heart, I decided to take a day off from my rigorous training and embark on a journey to explore the village. I could sense the tense atmosphere permeating the village, yet amidst the hardships of war, there were still smiles adorning people's faces. I couldn't help but wonder at the resilience of the human spirit, how they could find solace and moments of happiness even in the midst of chaos. What was the true reason behind the smiles I had observed on the faces of the villagers? Was it the belief that they would be safe as long as they were protected by the ninjas? Or were they simply making the best of their situation, finding solace in small moments of joy amidst the chaos of war? Lost in my contemplation, I wandered aimlessly until I stumbled upon a clearing with a weathered sign that read Training Ground 23. Normally off limits, it seemed that during these turbulent times, some children sought refuge here, making this their own playing ground. Though they were keeping to the entry point of the grounds, not daring to venture further into the woods that covered the other side of the grounds. Intrigued by the empty training ground, I decided to heed my mother's advice and take a moment to relax and delve deeper into my thoughts. I paced around the open space, my mind consumed with thoughts of peace and the intricate path it entailed. Unknown to myself, I had walked quite a distance until I came in front of a massive tree with vines falling from it. My eyes fixated on a peculiar sight. A boy of similar age laid on the ground, seemingly in a deep slumber. He was wearing a one-colored black jinbei, and had medium-length black hair adorning his head. He seemed to have pale skin as if he rarely went into the sun. Yet, what captivated my attention were the animated shadows swirling around him, forming a protective cocoon. As if they were sentient beings, they reacted to my presence, intensifying their activity, and I couldn't shake off the eerie sensation of being hunted by an apex predator. Fear enveloped me, freezing my body in place. In that moment, I questioned whether my life would truly meet its end here. I tried hard, internally shouted for my body to move, but it simply didn't listen. I had no control over my movements. With resignation, I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the impending fate, only to be startled by a groan emanating from the boy. His awakening was accompanied by a wide yawn, as if he had been roused from a deep slumber. Miraculously, the shadows around him instantly settled, their energy tamed, although I couldn't ignore the underlying sense that they remained ever watchful, lurking in the depths of his being. I couldn't help but gulp audibly as I observed the mysterious boy stretching his body, attempting to shake off the remnants of sleep. His groggy gaze eventually landed on me, and with a click of his tongue, he muttered something under his breath, seemingly irritated by my presence. I wondered what could have caused his annoyance. Gradually regaining my composure, no longer paralyzed by fear, I took a deep breath and faced the boy. His demeanor exuded a sense of annoyance, as if my presence was an inconvenience to him. I couldn't help but wonder what had stirred such irritation within him. I wanted to ask him about the shadows, but decided not to mention it for now, as I saw him getting up. He approached me with a question, his tone laced with a hint of condescension. "Why are you here? This isn't a place for kids, you know. There are big, scary monsters in the forest behind." He attempted to scare me, but it only fueled my curiosity. Undeterred, I retorted, determined to stand my ground. "You seem to be around the same age as me. So why are you here?" He looked at me incredulously, as if my question was utterly foolish. "To take a nap, of course," he replied, his tone implying the obviousness of his answer. He then cast a pitying gaze in my direction, leaving me perplexed as to why. Deciding not to dwell on his peculiar reaction, I recalled the etiquette lessons instilled by my mother and believed that it was best to get acquainted with this boy, as he seemed to be someone from a good background if the state of his clothes was any indication. So I introduced myself with grace. "My name is Uchiha Izuna. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance." His initial surprise morphed into a more attentive scrutiny as he took a better look at me. With a sigh, he rubbed the back of his head before reluctantly introducing himself. Sigh. "Well, I am Kuro." He seems to wait a few seconds before seemingly deciding something. "And this big guy," he said, pointing towards the tree, "is Benny. This spot here belongs to me. You should go and play elsewhere. he motioned dismissively, as if shooing me away. Intrigued by his naming of the tree, I couldn't help but ask with genuine curiosity, "Why did you name a tree and why Benny?" Letting out yet another sigh, he responded, "Troublesome Uchihas. Well, Benny provides me shade from the scorching sun when I take my nap here, and I spend a lot of time with it. It has become like a friend to me. Calling it tree would just feel wrong now." His explanation fascinated me. Could this be how friendships were formed? I had never experienced such a connection before, not having any friends of my own. My previous fear was already forgotten as curiosity got the better of me. I asked in all earnestness, "Is that how you make friends?" He gave me a deadpan look, clearly unamused by my sincerity. Ignoring his mocking stare, I maintained my seriousness, eager to learn the art of friendship. With a hint of mirth in his voice, he snorted and remarked, "What are you, an Itachi imitation? Why do you always look so serious? It's not cute at all." I wasn't familiar with this Itachi he referred to, but I didn't appreciate his comment. In a quick retort, I defended myself. "I beg to disagree. My mother has assured me that I am indeed cute." To my surprise, he burst into laughter. I hadn't intended for my response to be humorous, but his amusement seemed to lighten the atmosphere. His laughter continued until tears formed in his eyes. "Damn. I can't believe you said that with a straight face," he managed to say amidst his laughter. "But I digress. Yes, that's usually how you make friends." Upon hearing his explanation, I nodded and expressed my gratitude. "I see, so spending time together and sleeping together is how friendships are formed." His reaction was unexpected as he seemed to choke on his own saliva, vigorously shaking his head in disbelief. "PFFFT. Cough, what the hell are you even thinking? God. Cough, sigh. I guess I should be more careful with what I say to you. You act just like that Itachi. So troublesome." Once again, the name Itachi was mentioned, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was an Itachi-san in our Uchiha clan. I should ask mother later. He continued, clearly flustered, "Never mention sleeping together again. It has a second meaning that you aren't ready to know. And don't ask me how I know, I just do. When you enjoy someone's company and spend time doing things you both like, that's how friendships form, I think." Though he struggled to explain, I accepted his words without further questioning. I nodded in understanding and thanked him once more. He responded with a sigh, settling near a large root of the tree named Benny, muttering something about being troublesome. Eager to put his theory into practice, I promptly sat down beside him. However, he looked at me with irritation evident on his face. "Why are you sitting here?" he asked, clearly agitated. I replied in all seriousness, "I am trying to make a friend." "Huh? Benny is my friend. You should find another tree," he insisted with a pout, clearly protective of his connection with the tree. Feeling slightly perplexed, I realized that perhaps my intentions weren't clear enough. I needed to state my purpose more explicitly. "I want to be your friend, Kuro-san," I said, bowing slightly to emphasize my sincerity. He looked utterly baffled, as if confronted with a perplexing puzzle that he couldn't solve. After a moment of deep contemplation, his face went through a range of expressions: surprise, intrigue, annoyance, understanding, acceptance, and finally annoyance again. "Fine. You troublesome Uchiha. I will be your friend," he assented. "You have my gratitude, Kuro-san," I thanked him. "Why are you always so serious? You aren't cute at all," he grumbled, reluctantly accepting gratitude. Despite his reluctant response, I felt a warmth spread inside me. Was this what it meant to be accepted as a friend? My lips curved upwards into a smile as I felt genuinely happy. However, I couldn't help but retort, "But my mother said." "I don't care what your mother said," he interjected, his voice laced with annoyance. With that, he closed his eyes and leaned against Benny's trunk. Following his lead, I imitated his posture and leaned against the tree as well. I could feel the gentle breeze caress my face, and the dappled light shining through the leaves above created a soothing ambiance. It was undeniably peaceful. Was this the reason why Kuro sought solace in this place and befriended Benny the tree? I made a mental note to ask him about it later. But for now, I simply wanted to savor the tranquility of the moment. As I closed my eyes settle, I made a silent promise to myself. I would tell my mother that I had made my first friend. "So, how's it hanging, son?" I couldn't help but ask, observing the bound and upside-down Kuro over the lake. But that garnered me no reaction as I heard the sound of snoring coming from his direction. A faint smile tugged at my lips as I witnessed the impressive feat of Nara sleeping while being punished. It was no small accomplishment, considering the discomfort of blood rushing to one's head. But here was Kuro, defying expectations once again. Perhaps his unique shadow abilities were the reason he didn't feel the usual discomfort. Or maybe it was just his sheer talent for laziness. Sigh. Since he showed no signs of waking up, I decided to lend a hand, quite literally. With a gentle nudge, I attempted to rouse him from his slumber. "Oh, Yoshino, look what Kuro is doing," I began, but before I could finish my sentence, Kuro jolted awake and began panicking. "I'm not doing anything, Mom. I'm taking the punishment like a good beau. Wait, where is Mom?" He looked around in confusion until his gaze landed on me, standing there with a smirk. Instead of the expected joy or excitement of seeing his father return from war, he yawned and nonchalantly greeted me. "Oh, you're back, old man. Guess the war ended, huh?" Another yawn followed, as if he was settling into his upside-down confinement more comfortably. I couldn't help but sigh at his behavior and replied, "Well, you guessed right. We were given orders to return first. There are still some ninjas on active duty, cleaning up and patrolling the border for now, but the war is essentially over." I smiled, anticipating Kuro's next question. Konoha won the war. So, there's that. To my surprise, Kuro simply raised an eyebrow and responded with indifference, "No one ever wins a war, old man. They just delay it." His tone carried a sense of melancholy, leaving me curious about his underlying thoughts. "That's a very pessimistic way of looking at things, Kuro," I pointed out. "I wouldn't say pessimistic. It's more about seeing things for what they are. You and I both know that if one village gains extra strength someday, they'll start poking this so-called peace again. But anyway, that's why we have ninjas, isn't it?" He yawned once more, as if about to drift back to sleep. I quickly interrupted his intentions. "Whoa there, son. Your mother did ask me to bring you along." I emphasized on the mother and did part. This elicited another reaction from him, causing him to straighten his back and look at me with concern. It's hard to believe that a boy as intelligent and resourceful as Kuro would be so afraid of Yoshino. Well, I can't blame him. Yoshino can be. I shivered involuntarily and decided to push that thought aside for now. "And so," I asked, "so, what did you do this time to be punished, like this?" My curiosity evident in my raised brow. "Oh, I just got caught escaping my lesson," he replied with a straight face, as if it was a regular occurrence. I couldn't help but deadpan at his response. He must have thought I wanted more information, as he continued, "I was supposed to take basic taijutsu lessons from Yara-san. But that sounded too troublesome, so I decided to bail. But who would have known that the woman was a censor? Sigh, troublesome blondes." He grumbled under his breath. Yamanaka Yara, or rather Nara Yara, was the wife of my distant cousin, making her Kuro's aunt. She was an unusual member of the Yamanaka clan, excelling in taijutsu instead of their clan jutsu. As she was a close friend of Yoshino's, I suppose she took it upon herself to teach Kuro about taijutsu. Which was sweet of her. I will thank her and her husband later for their troubles. A smile formed on my lips as I observed Kuro grumbling about the unfairness of her being a censor. Kuro always found ways to escape his tutors, especially with the help of his shadows masking his presence. However, it seemed he hadn't quite figured out how to completely deceive censors yet. Perhaps I'll give him some hints later. "Anyway, old man, why did Mom send you here?" he asked apprehensively, a slight sheen of sweat on his forehead. "Ah, right. Your Uncle Inoichi and Aunt Noriko will be coming over for dinner with your Uncle Choza and Aunt Chiharu to celebrate our safe return from the war," I replied. It had been a while since we gathered as a family and spent some time together. This will be a nice way to wind down. "Oh, sigh. I guess it's been a while since I saw old man Inoichi and Choza. Give me a second, I'll be down shortly," he said lazily before his shadows moved and effortlessly cut the high-quality ropes that bound him to the tree. Watching his shadows still amazed me. Unlike our secret technique that controls our shadows, his was quite unique and versatile. At this point we had already wondered if this was a Kekkei Nikai at this point or it could even be a new Kekkei Toda. But that was a thought for later. Arching an eyebrow, I couldn't help but ask, "If you could have gotten out so easily, why haven't you done it already and escape?" He looked at me as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. It's not a bad place to nap, old man. That's why, he replied before stretching. I should have guessed that answer. Sigh, what a lazy kid. Suddenly, Kuro seemed to remember something and created a crow using his shadows, though it appeared more like a construct than an animated creature. He gave it some instructions before letting it fly. Curiosity got the better of me, and I looked at him inquisitively, to which he responded, "Tisk. Just making sure a troublesome girl won't make a fuss later." An evil smirk crossed my face upon hearing his words. Oh, does little Kuro have a girlfriend? To my disappointment, I didn't get the reaction I was hoping for. Instead, he let out a sigh and replied, "Just having her as a friend is troublesome enough. I dread the day I get a girlfriend. Hopefully that won't come anytime soon. Women are so troublesome." Sigh. Poor Kuro. Little does he know how badly he just jinxed himself. I chose to say nothing more and led him back to the house. After all, we had a gathering to prepare for. Ah, Kuro-chan is so cute. I couldn't help but smirk as I watched Nariko and Chiharu shower Kuro with affection, pinching his cheeks. Yoshino had a fond smile on her face, while Inoichi and Choza were enjoying the scene, sipping their drinks and laughing at their nephew's expense. Kuro, on the other hand, looked completely soulless from all the attention. Ma, Yoshino, you're really lucky to have a good boy like Kuro-chan, Chiharu said, hugging Kuro tightly against her bosom, almost suffocating him. I will silently pray for you, son. At least you won't die in vain. Yoshino snorted in amusement and replied, yeah, sure. The little troublemaker escapes all his lessons and goes off to God knows where. Really? But I heard from others that Kuro-chan has become a really good friend and leader to the other kids, Nariko chimed in with a chuckle. I thought he went to spend time with his little friends too, but after asking around, I found out that he only goes to find them on weekends at the park, Yoshino said, annoyance evident in her voice. Oh, maybe Kuro-chan is having a secret rendezvous with someone. Aren't you a little too young for that, Kuro-chan? Nariko playfully teased. I smirked and wanted to tell them what I had seen earlier today, but Kuro's eyes pleaded with me, subtly shaking his head as if begging me not to say anything. Well, after the scolding Yoshino had given him earlier, I decided to give him a small grace period. However, he can be certain that I will be using this as blackmail later. Kuro visibly sighed in relief and returned to his little affection session with his aunts. I overheard Inoichi asking, "Be a father?" He was staring at his wife playing with Kuro. I understood the question was directed at me, so I took a moment to reflect before answering, honestly. Yoshino and I had planned to have a child much later, but with the war looming, we decided to give it a try. We were both so young, and then there was Kuro's special circumstances. Choza and Inoichi nodded in understanding. I had shared Kuro's circumstances with them, as they were as close to me as brothers. But everything turned out great. Kuro. He's lazier than most Nara, though he is smarter than most too. Already doing things that exceed my expectations on a daily basis. I am really proud. My old man would have been proud too if he were here. They smiled and gave my shoulders a supportive squeeze. Honestly, Kuro isn't like most kids. From what I've heard from the elders, I thought raising a child would be a nightmare. But Kuro hardly ever cried, and when he did, it was for a reason. It was as if he was trying to communicate his needs. He learned to talk and walk quickly, picking up skills just by observing others. And even though I've been in the field most of the time, whenever I come back, I'm genuinely happy to see my boy. He doesn't worry about his safety, the future, or overthink things like most of us Nara do. I looked at Kuro, who was doing his best to escape Chiharu's grasp, and my smile turned fond. You really sound fulfilled, you know, Choza said, his gaze fixed on Chiharu and Kuro with longing. I guess it's time we try, Inoichi muttered, but we both heard it. Choza nodded in agreement. I smiled at my friends, realizing that it might not be a bad idea after all. We all continued to talk and enjoy each other's company until it was time to say our goodbyes. Chiharu and Nariko seemed reluctant to let go of Kuro, but he managed to wriggle free from their iron grips and darted off somewhere. In a more serious tone, Inoichi spoke up, I think the third Hokage might retire. I nodded, as I was aware of the situation to some extent. He's been contemplating retirement for a while now. This war was the final straw for him. He believes he has witnessed enough conflict during his tenure and wants the next generation to take over. Choza looked a bit saddened by the news and asked, "Who will succeed him? Will it be Lord Jiraiya or Lord Orochimaru?" Inoichi's expression turned pale, and he replied, "I'm not sure about Lord Jiraiya, but if it's Lord Orochimaru, I fear there will be significant changes within the village." I shook my head and cautioned them, "It's better not to speculate at this point. Let's wait and see. I'm sure the third Hokage has his own choices in mind. We should evaluate those choices first and consider how they will impact Konoha before casting our votes. Besides, after the recent war, there may be other viable options as well." Inoichi and Choza understood my point and nodded, wearing slight smiles. "I still can't believe he really did that. I'm pretty sure Konoha won't be sending any ninja to the land of Earth for a while," Choza remarked, awe evident in his voice. "Well, it was war. It was either them or us, I suppose," Inoichi replied with a sigh but still a small smile gracing his lips. I nodded in agreement. I couldn't help but gaze towards my right, where the Hokage rock stood in the distance. I wondered, whose face will I see carved there next? February 10th, year 64, Konoha Cemetery. "It wasn't your fault, Kakashi," Minato-sensei's voice reached my ears, attempting to reassure me once again. But how could I believe his words when my friend's eye was forever embedded in my own, while his lifeless body lay buried beneath the earth, lost to us? I felt Minato-sensei's hand gently squeeze my shoulder, offering support in his own way. "Will I keep losing people like this? When will it end?" I asked, the pain in my heart threatening to tear me apart. There was a moment of silence before Minato-sensei spoke, his voice filled with wisdom and emotion. "We all have to face the inevitability of death, Kakashi. It's a risk we bear as shinobi. But precisely because we are shinobi, we fight until the end to protect those who are precious to us." "What if there's nothing left for us to protect?" I asked, my voice filled with anguish and despair. Minato-sensei ruffled my hair gently, a gesture that felt both comforting and bittersweet. Then, he spoke words that resonated deep within me. "You felt the need to protect your teammates because they felt the same way about you. Obito entrusted you with his eyes so that you could carry on in his place. He would want you to live your life to the fullest. We always find someone or something precious to live for, Kakashi. And if nothing else, know that you are precious to me." He didn't say anything more, standing there with me for a while before he had to leave to meet the third Hokage. I remember that they were going to talk about Sensei's inauguration as the fourth Hokage. I was happy for my sensei, but still the death of my friends kept haunting me. I remained there, contemplating his words. Did I still have something worth living for? I muttered to Obito's grave, haunted by the memory of his final moments. "Kakashi. Take Rin away from here. It's okay." His voice echoed in my mind. He had trusted me to keep her safe, and I had failed. Rin, a girl who became more than a teammate to me, and I killed her with my own. I know that the circumstances forced me, but I could still see her blood soaking my hand. How could I live with myself? How could I deserve to live when I couldn't fulfill my friend's last wish? How could I deserve to live when I caused the death of my friend? As my thoughts spiraled, faces of those dear to me flashed before my eyes, from Rin to Obito, from Minato-sensei to Kushina, from my father to many others that I got acquainted with time. They were my precious people, yet so many of them were gone. But there were still some who remained by my side. I didn't know if I could protect them or not, but I will give it my all. I will not let Obito's sacrifice go to waste. I will not let his last gift to me go to waste. My Sharingan reacted to my desire. With my Sharingan ablaze, I made a solemn vow to Obito's resting place. "I promise. I will keep them safe. I will do my best to not waste your sacrifice. Forgive me, Obito, but I will try to live the fullest." Having made my decision, I turned away, determined to carry out my promise. I was walking aimlessly through the village, looking at the faces of the celebrating villagers as the news of the war ending and Konoha's supposed victory was a reason for celebration. I wished my teammates could be here to see the celebrations they fought so hard and gave their lives to achieve. Looking around and trying to see if the festive moods would rub on myself, I heard someone shouting from the side. "Shut up! You troublesome Uchiha!" Hearing the name Uchiha, my eyes instantly tried to find where the sound came from. And I located 2 kids and an old woman trying to store away boxes. Intrigued by the sight, I decided to get closer. The old woman seemed to be the store owner of a sweets store, and she had received a new shipment of ingredients. She was getting help from the 2 kids to store the boxes. One of the kids, a little boy with medium-length raven black hair and a jinbei outfit, was grumbling while doing most of the work. The other kid, a petite girl with long black hair, watched him with mirth in her eyes. "Please tell me, why am I the only one helping?" the boy grumbled. The girl put a hand before her mouth and replied in a flat tone, "I thought you were a gentleman, Kuro-san. My mother told me that gentlemen didn't let ladies do labor work." The old woman nodded and patted the little girl, confirming her statement. It seemed that the boy's name was Kuro, and I made a mental note of it. He wholeheartedly helped the store owner, while the little girl eventually joined in after teasing him a bit. After some time, the old lady expressed her gratitude and offered them some sweets, which they gratefully accepted. I continued to observe them, finding the pair intriguing and having nothing better to do. As they moved through the village, I noticed that many shopkeepers and elderly people greeted them as if they had known each other for a while. Some even offered them candies or food. Although the boy kept grumbling, it appeared that he was well liked. They came across another shop that needed help with some delivery, and this time it was the boy who approached first, causing the little girl to smile. "You know, you're a big softie, right, Kuro-san?" she asked, her smile evident. "Sumi, now go away and let me deliver this so I can take a nap," he replied, sounding flustered by her comment. "What does Su mean, Kuro-san?" the girl asked, only to be ignored as they made their way to the outskirts of the village with a parcel in hand. I continued to follow them from a distance, intrigued by the peculiarities I had noticed in the boy's chakra. Activating my Sharingan, I closely observed him and was taken aback by what I saw. While he appeared like any other child on the surface, his chakra was already unlocked and was constantly in motion, as if he were using a jutsu continuously, yet there was no visible external flow. I couldn't quite grasp what was happening, but I kept a watchful eye on the pair. They completed their delivery quest and received much praise from the client. They then bought some barbecue sticks and made their way through the village. They eventually arrived at a clearing near the outskirts before sitting down near a pond. It was there that the girl, wearing a serious expression, innocently inquired, "It's too bad that we can't go to the spot anymore. Will Benny be okay?" The boy, munching on a stick of barbecue, replied nonchalantly, "I'm pretty sure Benny will be fine, and I'll still go there from time to time. That place is the best for taking naps, after all." Shaking her head, a small smile tugging at her lips, the girl suggested, "So where should we hang out from now on, Kuro-san?" "Who said I want to hang out with you, you troublesome girl?" the boy muttered, though his words seemed to lack any seriousness. Unfazed, the girl proposed with anticipation, "I know. We can go to the woods behind the Hokage mountain, you know, the one on the eastern part of the village." However, the boy appeared somewhat apprehensive, prompting him to ask, "Why do you want to go there?" "Because I saw you going that way, and thought that your home was near there, and as you were so reluctant to move all the time, I thought a place near your house would be good. And I noticed that not many people go to that part of the village," the girl explained, her reasoning laced with logic. The boy sighed and responded, "That's because that part of the village, the forest, is a restricted area." "Really?" the girl exclaimed in wonder. "Yes, it belongs to the Nara clan. They breed and take care of their deer herd there," the boy elaborated. Disappointment tinged the girl's voice as she asked, "So, we can't go there?" "I never said that," the boy retorted. Both the girl and I fixed our gazes on the boy, waiting for him to continue. By now, I had already deduced his identity, but I wanted to hear more. "I will get permission for you. It's just gonna be a drag," the boy replied, his tone indicating a hint of exasperation. The girl tilted her head, seeking clarification, to which the boy responded, "Sigh. It's just that I'm sure my mother will make a fuss when I bring up letting you play in our backyard. It's gonna give her so much ammo to fire at me, what a drag." A look of realization crossed the girl's face as she asked, "So Kuro-san is from the Nara clan? Is your full name Nara Kuro?" It seemed that the boy had never revealed his full name to the girl before. He averted his gaze, appearing a little embarrassed, and reluctantly admitted, "Troublesome. Not really, my full name is actually Nara Shikakuro, but everyone just calls me Kuro, and I am sort of, maybe the heir to the Nara clan. The girl was taken aback for a moment, but she swiftly accepted this revelation. So we are both heirs to our clans, huh? She innocently asked, causing the boy to recoil slightly. What did you say? He asked, clearly taken aback. Oh, I am also the heiress to the Uchiha clan. I think? My father is the clan head, and before him, my grandfather was the clan head, she explained. Upon hearing this, a range of emotions played across the boy's face, eventually settling into acceptance tinged with a hint of nervousness. He muttered something along the lines of, "Stupid alternate universe." I noted away that phrase as I wasn't sure what alternate universe meant, but I can always look into it later. They continued to chat, discussing mundane matters and training. The girl expressed her desire for the boy to train with her, but he initially refused, claiming it was too much work. However, the girl managed to persuade him to at least accompany her during her training. As the clock neared 4 p.m., the girl bid her farewell and left the boy alone in the clearing. It seemed like a suitable time for me to depart as well. However, as I attempted to use my body flicker technique, I suddenly found myself frozen in place, as if trapped in a dreadful genjutsu. My body was gradually ensnared by a dark substance that I realized was my own shadow. Opening my Sharingan to its fullest extent, I surveyed my surroundings, only to discover that the boy, who had been standing far away moments ago, was now standing right in front of me with cold eyes. What are you doing here? Are you some sort of spy? Why were you spying on Izuna and I? Speak, old man, the boy practically growled. Though my body was immobilized, I managed to move my mouth and hastily replied, "My name is Hitaki Kakashi. I am a Jonin of Konoha. I wasn't spying. I simply found you and the girl interesting and was merely observing." I spoke the truth while my back was soaked with cold sweat, as I had already surmised that the boy before me, Nara Shikakuro, was far from ordinary. The boy appeared to relax as I spoke, finally taking in my appearance before nodding. He released his hold on me and said, "Sigh. You are really troublesome. Now you know my secret. If you were a spy, it would have been easier." Hearing that, I felt goosebumps on my skin as I knew what he indicated. He seemed to contemplate for a bit before sighing. "Can I at least ask you not to tell anyone about this? I know you are duty-bound to report to the Hokage, and I won't stop you there since the old man already knows. But can you keep this a secret from others?" He asked, clearly annoyed, to which I agreed, understanding the reason for his request. The boy let out a sigh and patted my arm, urging me, "Please don't spy on us like that again. I actually noticed you from miles away, and the only reason I didn't take action earlier was because of Izuna. If you had done anything to harm her or a member of my family, I wouldn't have hesitated to drown you in my shadows. Whether you're a Jonin of Konoha or a missing nin of Kiri, it wouldn't have mattered to me." I could feel the weight of his threat as I continued to meet his gaze, his eyes resembling cold, bottomless voids. But as soon as he finished his warning, his eyes softened, becoming lazy and tired. He added, "Well, see you around, senpai. By the way, your dad was really cool. He's one of my heroes, goodbye." With that, he vanished into his own shadows. I stood there for about 10 minutes, still processing the encounter, before finally exhaling in relief. His last comment about my father was interesting at least. Then, I hurriedly made my way to my sensei's location, knowing that he would be it after all. The Nara heir did mention that I could inform the Hokage about himself. He just didn't specify whether it had to be the past or future Hokage. A faint smile crept beneath my mask as I knew that my sensei was going to become the 4th Hokage, and the official announcement would be made by the end of the week. So basically I wasn't betraying his request, technically. Well, at the end it didn't matter, as he was a part of Konoha and would sooner or later have to show what he can do to everyone. Even that Uchiha girl seemed interesting, being the heiress to the clan and all. It seems that the village will get some truly interesting ninjas in the future, I smirked as I flickered away. March 7th, year 65. Nara Compound Dam. "He's too lazy to even cry," I muttered, my eyes welling up with emotion as I gazed at the tiny bundle in my arms. I had known that I would soon have a baby brother, but holding him made it all so real, so different from mere anticipation. He was, after all, my own flesh and blood, my little brother. A gentle thud on my head snapped me out of my reverie, and I turned to see the red-haired woman, Kushina, grinning at me. "You were just like that, too, Databane. Too lazy to even cry. Although he's cuter than you were, she teased, attempting to lighten the moment. I couldn't help but agree. Of course, he is. He's my little brother, after all, I replied, a soft smile playing on my lips. Kushina inspected the baby before turning to talk to my parents. Seems like he's healthy and doesn't have the same issues as Kuro-chan. Like I said before, Kuro-chan was a special case. Relief washed over my parents, and I joined in their sigh of relief. After spending so long exploring my powers and understanding the concepts of this world, I knew I was unique. Yes, I was reincarnated, but even then, my situation felt unique. At such a young age, I had access to an unimaginable amount of chakra, which was almost alarming. Not to mention the imbalance of yin and yang that should have resulted in autism at best and death at worst, but instead it fueled my extraordinary shadow manipulation. And then there was the earring, which I long deduced to be a sort of seal, possibly holding back any excess amount of chakra that would otherwise harm my body or maybe even others around me. All these elements spoke volumes about my circumstances, but truth be told, I was too lazy to care about them. Yet, by this time, I had managed to learn how to control and use my shadows. I mean, I was sure that I still had many things to discover about it, but I had ideas. I was undeniably overpowered for someone my age, but let's not dwell on that right now. During our father-son bonding moments, my father and I would have conversations about what made me, well, special. Sometimes it would be during a challenging game of shogi, where I inevitably end up losing to the old man, or during a peaceful session of cloud watching after taking care of the deer in the forest. But regardless of the setting, I managed to get my father to open up about my unique shadows and tell me what he had in his mind. The adults were not oblivious to the fact that I had a firm grip on my powers. I mean, they're all ninjas, after all. I didn't feel the need to hide it from my family by being sneaky or anything. The only time I resorted to such tactics was to escape from my lessons. But after discussing it with my father, we began to suspect that my powers might be some kind of kekkei genkei. Even though we the Nara have a special affinity with yin and shadows, it being a bloodline limit was a better theory. But let's not dwell on that for now. My parents smiled gratefully and expressed their gratitude to Kushina. Thank you, Kushina. We knew that this situation wasn't the same as Kuro's, as we were already aware of his abnormalities well before the due date, so we were hopeful that our new baby wouldn't face the same challenges. But it's always good to be cautious, my mother said, her smile brimming with happiness upon seeing my baby brother born without any complications. Don't worry about it, Databane. I'm happy to help, and I finally get to meet adorable little Kuro-chan again, Kushina said, playfully squishing my face. I retaliated with a protest, hey, but it fell on deaf ears as she continued, anyway, what are you going to name the little guy? She turned her attention to my parents. Before my parents could even think about names, I piped up confidently, Shikamaru. Huh? What are you talking about, Kuro-chan? Kushina asked, puzzled. I replied with determination, his name will be Nara Shikamaru. Amused, my father chimed in, as a deer. I shot him a glare that my mother and Kushina found endearing, and I retorted, got a problem with that? He chuckled in response to my glare and said, no, it sounds like a fine name. What do you think, Yoshino? My mother's smile softened, a clear distinction from the one she usually wore before scolding me, and she chuckled softly. Sounds absolutely lovely. Kuro-kun is already proving to be a wonderful big brother, isn't he? Laughter filled the air among the adults, but I paid little attention to it. In that moment, I felt truly blessed as I watched baby Shikamaru peacefully slumber. Well, I can only hope that my baby will be as adorable as little Shikamaru here, Kushina commented, her hand gently caressing her rounded stomach, a clear sign of anticipation. Congratulations, Aunt Kushina. I congratulated her, and my parents echoed my sentiments. She blushed slightly, but smiled warmly, thanking us for our kind words. Thank you. But I should be on my way, Databane. With her farewell, she couldn't resist giving my face another affectionate squish before heading off. Sighing, I couldn't help but hope that I would soon outgrow this baby-faced phase. Or even better, that Shikamaru would take my place sooner rather than later. A mischievous smirk crept across my face as I gazed at my slumbering little brother. A few weeks had passed since Shikamaru's birth, and we had plenty to celebrate. It seemed like my old man and my eccentric uncles were really getting into the spirit of things. Sigh. I guess they were planning quite the event. Just 4 days after Shikamaru, Ino was born, and a couple of weeks later, it was Choji's turn. I mean, according to my knowledge of the series, Ino and Shikamaru's births were quite close, and Choji's wasn't too far off either. But seriously, it almost felt planned. But hey, with the heirs of the Yamanaka and Akamichi clans now part of our trio, I found myself having 3 little siblings alongside my growing list of minions from the 3 clans. And honestly, I wasn't all that unhappy about it. The 3 babies were growing on me. I reached down and picked up Shikamaru, sensing that he wanted to be held. Just then, I heard my mother's voice calling out to me. "Kuro, your little friend is here." Her voice was way too sweet, and I already knew who had come to visit. Sigh. "How's it going, Izuna?" I greeted her. "Hello Kuro-san, I came to visit you and check on the baby," she replied politely, as always. Sigh. "You don't have to be so serious, you know. We've known each other for over a year now. I thought you could relax a bit more by now," I said, continuing to play with Shikamaru in my arms. Izuna fell silent for a moment, seemingly trying to come to terms with something. Finally, she spoke softly, "I will try, Kuro-kun." I didn't think too much of it at the time, as she had changed the way she addressed me. I simply nodded my head, still engrossed in playing with Shikamaru. Izuna's smile grew softer as she sat down beside me and cautiously reached out to touch Shikamaru's cheek. I couldn't help but laugh at her cautiousness. "Ha ha ha, he won't break. You don't have to be so afraid, you know." She seemed to ponder my words for a moment before gathering the Koru. The baby simply stared back at her. Finding the situation amusing, I decided to pass Shikamaru into Izuna's arms. At first, she panicked slightly but soon cradled him gently. There was a look of awe on Izuna's face as she held the baby. It was a peaceful scene, with Shikamaru yawning in her arms while she smiled softly at him. "I hope my new sibling will let me hold them like this," Izuna mused out of nowhere. Oh, right. It was about time for Sasuke to be born, wasn't it? But that brought another issue to the forefront. The Kyuubi incident was drawing near, and I had no means to control the situation. I lacked power, recognition, a good excuse, and a way to protect myself and my family from becoming suspects on Danzo's list if I tried to intervene. Honestly, I didn't want the Kyuubi incident to occur. It had caused so much death and destruction, shattered the peace, and would ultimately claim the life of our 4th Hokage and Kushina, leading to the tragic Uchiha massacre that I desperately wanted to prevent. I felt lost, unsure of what to do in this precarious situation. As I glanced back at Izuna, who was still smiling at a drowsy Shikamaru, I couldn't help but smile in return. Well, I am a Nara, aren't I? I guess I'll have to find a way to protect those smiles, huh? August 19th, year 65. Namikaze residence. It had been a tough few days with the new reforms and the task of getting everything in order after the recent war. So, when Shikaku offered to handle the Jonin meeting for me, allowing me to go home early, I was incredibly grateful. As I walked through the door, however, I could hear the heated argument between none other than the love of my life, Kushina, and the young boy who often visited our house to keep her company. "How dare you say barbecue is better than ramen, you brat?" Kushina's voice carried her indignation. But the boy in question seemed unfazed, completely engrossed in his calligraphy set and a scroll that looked suspiciously like Kushina's beginner Fuinjutsu scroll. He retorted without even looking at her, "I'm not daring anything. I'm simply stating facts. Ramen is too heavy to eat all the time. It's troublesome." "And you think you can eat barbecue all the time?" Kushina's voice dripped with anger. "Huh? What does being able to eat all the time have to do with anything?" the boy replied, still focused on his calligraphy. Kushina's anger seemed to grow at his nonchalant response. "You brat, you just..." Before she could continue her tirade, the boy interrupted her. "Oh, Aunt Kushina, look, I've got the calligraphy down. I think I can make some awesome seals now." Instantly, Kushina's attention shifted to his work, completely forgetting the argument they were just having moments ago. Damn, that kid's got skills. Maybe I need to learn how to divert her ire like that. I couldn't help but smile as I watched them, realizing that even in the midst of disagreements, they were developing a strong bond. It was moments like these that reminded me of the importance of family and the joy they brought into my life. Not bad, Kuro-chan. You've got all the strokes right, But I still don't think you're ready for an actual seal. Not just yet, Kushina said, her smile indicating a mix of approval and caution. The boy shrugged nonchalantly. Meh. I can wait a few days to start making the seals. I wonder if I can create a seal that can work as wings. He began pondering his dreams, his innocence shining through. If I didn't know the immense power and danger he possessed when necessary, I would find him genuinely innocent and adorable. But he was far from that. However, one thing I couldn't deny was his loyalty and love for his family, friends, and even Kushina, who has somehow managed to squeeze her way into his little group of adored individuals. And that, at least, was a positive sign. The Nara clan held a significant position among the noble clans, known for their political astuteness and the unwavering support they received from the Yamanaka and Akamichi clans. They were staunchly loyal to the village. In fact, after conducting a thorough behavioral analysis on Nara Shikakuro, it was concluded that he shared the same sentiments. While not necessarily for the entire village, he was undoubtedly dedicated to his clan, the alliance, and those he held dear. If we could introduce and instill the concept of the whole village being dear to him, then Konoha would gain an additional layer of protection. And I believed that both Kushina and I could help bring him into the fold, nurturing his loyalty and expanding his sense of responsibility towards the village as a whole. It wouldn't be an easy task, but with patience, guidance, and a little bit of luck, we could shape him into a formidable guardian in the future, someone who would protect Konoha with everything he had. I walked in with a smile and greeted them. Kushina, Kuro-kun, how was your day? Kushina finally noticed me and beamed, rushing over for a hug. She began excitedly recounting her day, mentioning how she went shopping with Makoto and baby Sasuke, and how they unexpectedly ran into Kuro and Izuna. She practically kidnapped Kuro to continue teaching him Fuinjutsu, fulfilling her job as his self-proclaimed tutor. Although the full story of how she started teaching him was more extensive, that's how Kushina usually drags the boy to teach her, as he seemed to have a penchant for running away. Kushina had been hosting Kuro a few days a week for over a month now. Well, whenever she could catch him really. And it was evident that she had grown attached to him. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed your day, honey. How about we have dinner and then I can take Kuro-kun home? I suggested with a smile. Kushina suddenly remembered that she was in the middle of preparing dinner and rushed off to the kitchen. I couldn't help but chuckle at her distracted nature. Kuro, on the other hand, lounged on the couch, half lying as he read a scroll on modern Fuinjutsu and its uses. With a bored tone, he remarked, "Sigh. She's always getting sidetracked like that. I really worry about the kid, you know. Maybe you should hire a babysitter for Aunt Kushina or something." I couldn't resist a playful retort. I'm sure she'll have plenty of help. After all, the kid will have a good older brother to take care of him, won't he? Kuro scrunched his brows in annoyance and replied, "Why are you adults so troublesome? I already have my hands full with 3 babies who are almost always handed over to me for babysitting. And then there's Izuna, who keeps seeking advice on Sasuke. And now you're even roping me into taking care of your kid. Come on, man. You guys are not cool at all." His complaints made me laugh. Kuro may grumble, but deep down, he cared for his siblings and friends. I knew he enjoyed spending time with them, even if he didn't always admit it. I smiled and said, "You know, Kuro-kun, everyone can see how much you enjoy being with your little siblings. We've all seen your smile." Kuro turned away, pretending disinterest as he returned to his scroll, but I knew that my words had reached him on some level, and that was enough for me. I felt a sense of relief as I observed Kuro's positive emotional growth towards his siblings and friends. Despite his unique circumstances, he was forging meaningful connections and experiencing a fulfilling childhood surrounded by trusted friends and loved ones. It was the best path for his progress, which both Lord Third and I agreed on. After all, not every exceptional child was allowed to have a normal childhood. Satisfied, I settled into my chair, ready to unwind, when Kuro suddenly sat up straight and fixed me with a serious gaze. I recognized that look. It was one Kakashi had described to me in great detail, reserved for those who posed a threat to his cherished ones. "There's something unsettling happening in the village," he began, dropping a bombshell or shifted, and I demanded, "Explain." Kuro scrunched his nose as he pondered, before continuing, "There's a peculiar shadow lurking around the graveyard. Initially, I thought it might be some of those extra creepy Anbu guys. However, this distinct presence I occasionally sense is likely tailing your former student, Kakashi." His revelation startled me, and I couldn't help but inquire, but why would someone follow Kakashi? How should I know? Kuro retorted with a hint of frustration. I only noticed this peculiarity due to its proximity and the familiarity I have with Kakashi's aura. The fact that it's happening repeatedly without Kakashi seemingly aware of it raises suspicions in my book. Deep in thought, I absorbed the gravity of the situation. If someone was covertly shadowing Kakashi, it signified a potential threat to the village and its inhabitants. As both his former sensei and the Hokage, it was my duty to ensure their safety. That's concerning. But how have we not discovered this yet? This is a huge security breach, I expressed with a tinge of annoyance. Kuro contemplated the situation and provided several possibilities, showcasing the intelligence inherent in the Nara clan. Well, what can I tell you? He began. From what I understand, it could mean a couple of things. 1. The person could be an exceptional spy who managed to evade all our security measures. 2. They might have been raised here in Konoha and later turned into a spy for someone else. 3. Maybe I'm finally gaining awesome powers to see dead people. 4. This person could be connected to Kakashi and possess teleportation abilities like yours. As I listened, I considered each possibility carefully. The first seemed possible, but unlikely, given Kakashi's skills and the village's robust barrier system. It would be incredibly challenging for someone to infiltrate in such a manner. The second possibility held greater weight, as members of an organization might take an interest in Kakashi, viewing him as an unpredictable factor. However, if that were the case, they should have informed me, as Kakashi falls directly under my jurisdiction. As for the third option, I remained skeptical and had no comment. Regarding the final possibility, I found it difficult to believe, as I was the only one who had perfected Lord Second's teleportation ability. If someone else possessed similar powers, there would likely be noticeable chakra fluctuations. Therefore, that seemed unlikely. Nevertheless, I resolved to increase security measures and set up a trap to apprehend the intruder. While there was a chance that Kuro's instincts might be incorrect, I trusted his extraordinary abilities and intuition. If he believed there was an infiltrator, it was likely the case. I nodded to Kuro, acknowledging his insights. Thank you, Kuro-kun. Your perception and analytical skills are impressive. We will take your concerns seriously and bolster our defenses. I have no doubt that your observations hold merit. He nodded nonchalantly, suggesting, I think it's best if you bait him with Kakashi. I mean, he is already following the guy, so why not use that as an opportunity? I smiled at his suggestion, appreciating his strategic thinking. It seemed that we would be occupied with this matter starting tomorrow. However, before we delved into the planning, Kushina called out to us, urging us to join her in the dining room. I chuckled softly and replied, it can wait for now. Dinner with my family takes priority. With that, we made our way to the dining room, leaving our discussions and preparations for later. September 1st, year 65, Konoha Cemetery. It's been a while. Rin, I greeted, my voice barely above a whisper. As I stood before her grave, memories of my late teammates flooded my mind. It was the first day of the month, a day I always set aside to pay my respects to those who had passed on. But as always, there was no answer from Rin. I knew there will never be, yet, I couldn't help but speak to her as if she were still here with me. A lot has happened since I last visited. I said, placing a bouquet of flowers on her grave. Kushina is still as energetic as ever, and she still makes me eat ramen with her whenever she catches me. I looked up at the sky, my thoughts drifting to my sensei and the problems at the northern border. Sensei has been swamped with work, and we've been hearing about some trouble at the border, though he says that it's just Kumo and their usual probing. Despite the sadness that weighed heavily on my heart, I couldn't help but smile as I thought of the little brats that I have been keeping an eye on. We have some promising juniors, you would have liked them really. One of them a training maniac, kinda like I used to be. And the other is a boy, a lazy bastard, but he is special. But as I spoke, my thoughts turned to the past and the war that had consumed our lives. Honestly, it makes me sad that this era doesn't know war. If only we had been born a little later, we could have. You might be. My voice trailed off as I struggled to speak, but taking control of my grief, I continued to speak. Speaking of being born later, this is technically top secret information, but, before I could finish my sentence, a sudden jolt ran through me. My years of trained senses screamed at me and I attempted to escape, but found my mouth trapped within a weightless, dark binding, rendering me mute. A familiar voice whispered near my ear, bringing back a memory I dreaded. You know, even trees have ears, senpai. There was a hint of childish amusement in the voice. Just then, something was hurled from the shadows towards the trees behind me. Realizing that I could still move, I followed the trajectory of the object, which turned out to be a special kunai I knew all too well, leading me toward the tree line. I squinted and saw a human figure, causing my eyes to widen in disbelief. Kuro remained hidden, his whereabouts unknown. As the kunai went straight through the humanoid figure, the shadows around the figure dissipating, and I watched in awe as Minato-sensei materialized out of thin air, wielding a kunai that sliced into the figure, eliciting a loud scream. Kuro's shadows sprang into life, enclosing the figure within a dome-like capsule. However, I heard Kuro click his tongue and exclaim, "Damn it, old man, he isn't inside." Understanding that we were dealing with an intruder, I immediately took action and pursued the trespasser, revealing my left eye as my Sharingan glared. The gravity of the situation became clear to me. My back got covered in cold sweat. I had almost revealed classified information to an intruder who had skillfully concealed their presence, listening in on my one-sided conversation. I knew it was no time to dread as we had an intruder to apprehend. I tried to find where the intruder went. Only in that moment, I witnessed Sensei smashing a tree with his Rasengan, breaking it apart and revealing a masked individual emerging from the other side as if materializing from thin air. The intruder attempted hand seals but quickly turned intangible again when a staff passed right through him. He swiftly evaded Sensei's attack, leaping away. "You were right to call for me, Minato. This man possesses an ability to become intangible. I've already deployed the Anbu to secure the entire perimeter," spoke an elderly man in battle armor, holding a staff. Lord Third, I was taken aback, realizing that even the seasoned professor and the Anbu were aware of this covert mission. It became apparent that I had been used as bait. That means Sensei and the others knew that I was being followed. But who would target me? Just then, I heard a whisper in my ear. "Stop entertaining strange thoughts, Senpai. That guy's movements are erratic. Try to control his actions so I can use my shadows to restrain him. He is moving too much, troublesome, surprising amount of vigor." His usual lazy drawl was nowhere to be seen. I understood his plan. It was simple really. Lightning chakra started gathering in my hand as I disappeared towards the masked man. Anger surged within me as I couldn't fathom how someone would exploit my time spent with my departed friends to gather information about the village. With Reikari crackling in my hand, I materialized directly behind him, ready to strike his heart and end it all. However, my jutsu passed right through him, and at that moment, he turned towards me. I glimpsed his eyes. Those eyes. The same red, filled with anger and pain. A Sharingan glared at me, its pattern different from what I had seen before. I flinched for a second, but swiftly regained my composure. Passing through him, I launched a barrage of kunai at the man, hoping to land a hit. Only for the masked intruder to materialize elsewhere. I declared aloud, "He possesses a different Sharingan." Both Sensei and Lord Third were taken aback, growing cautious at my statement. But this time, the man finally spoke from where he stood. Looking down at us with his eyes blazing with hatred. "Be warned, Konoha. I, Uchiha Madara, will exact my revenge," he declared, attempting to vanish with his power. However, before he could disappear, we heard Kuro shout. "Once you're here, you better stay for dinner, you bastard." Kuro's shadow darted towards the intruder, following into the swirling void, trying to prevent his escape. But all we saw was the man disappearing into vortex. "Damn it. I had a hold on him, but I can't sense my shadow anymore," we heard Kuro curse. Finally, we found Kuro standing under the shade of a tree coming out of his hiding. "It's all right, Kuro-kun. It's not your fault that the intruder got away." Lord Third approached the boy, offering him solace. Minato-sensei arrived, accompanied by members of the Anbu squad, Boar and Bear. Sensei appeared furious, and when he looked at me, a disappointed expression crossed his face. "Kakashi. We'll discuss this later," he said, addressing me. I had lowered my head in shame. He didn't say anything more. Then, he turned to Kuro, adopting a serious tone. "What could you gather from the battle?" That simple question surprised not only me but also Boar and Bear. Yet, its significance weighed heavily, for the boy's response held importance even for the cage of a hidden village. Sigh. This was so troublesome, old man. Kuro sighed in exasperation. Remember when I mentioned the strange shadow? Earning a nod from Sensei. That guy didn't have a shadow when he went intangible. So troublesome. That's why I couldn't capture him using his own shadow. And throughout the battle you guys were moving all about the place. I was having trouble keeping up. Sigh. Stupid fast people, making it hard for me to utilize the surrounding shadows around him. That's why I had to get so close for that final strike. I don't know if it got him or not. I did feel that I got a hold of him, but I doubt it did much. I was actually going in for the kill there. Upon hearing those words, Lord Third let out a saddened sigh, probably due to Kuro speaking so casually about killing someone. Sheesh, Gramps. He was an intruder. For the safety of my family, I will kill if I have to. Stop acting like it's not in the job description, troublesome old man. Kuro mumbled the last part. In that moment, I heard Lord Third chuckle softly while Minato-sensei smiled at the boy's antics. It helped ease my own uneasiness, as the situation had shaken me as well. Boar, breaking his silence, spoke up. Hokage-sama. That man identified himself as Uchiha Madara and possessed a Sharingan. Is he? His question remained unfinished as Sensei intervened. For now, this will be classified as an S-ranked secret. No one should mention Uchiha Madara or anything related to him to anyone, Sensei stated firmly. Boar and Bear nodded before disappearing in a flash. Sensei then turned to Lord Third and asked, "What should we do? I don't want to believe that the Uchiha are involved." The elderly man let out a deep sigh before responding, "Until we conduct further investigations, we can't jump to conclusions. However, it would be wise to increase surveillance around the Uchiha clan." But Kuro interrupted abruptly. "Are you going senile, Gramps?" I tried to admonish the boy, but Lord Third halted me and gestured for Kuro to continue. "You're planning to increase surveillance on a clan of ninjas who have exceptional perception and can detect the slightest movements with their freaky red eyes. Are you sure you're not trying to provoke them or something? Making them feel like the village doesn't trust them? You should know how rumors get spread, right? They already get hate since they serve in the police force and are known for their stern treatment of criminals. You want to add to that?" Kuro finished with an annoyed face. Lord Third listened attentively before responding. What you said holds truth, Kuro-kun, but this incident poses a significant threat to the village. If we don't uncover the truth, we may face an attack from within our own territory." Sigh, troublesome. Why are you thinking about this from the wrong angle, Gramps? I never said we shouldn't do something. Instead of doing something that might provoke one of the strongest clans in our village, why not simply call a meeting with the Uchiha leaders and inform them about this incident? Instead of pointing fingers at them, why not task them with finding the culprit who's calling himself Madara? Give them the responsibility to hunt down this masked criminal who supposedly has a Sharingan, which may or may not be stolen, and let them clear the name of their clan. Make it seem like doing this quest will be glorious or something of pride or something. They like those sorts of things, no? Kuro finished with a huff. Sensei had a slight smile on his face, as did Lord Third. After contemplating for a bit, I also found this to be a reasonable idea. But what about the rumors you mentioned earlier, Kuro-kun? Won't they still spread if a large group of Uchiha starts moving? Sensei pointed out, much to the boy's annoyance. Kuro gave Sensei the stink eye before replying, "You do realize we're ninja, right? We play around with information. Instead of letting rumors spread uncontrollably, we can shape the narrative ourselves. Spread our version of the story before it becomes a messy rumor. Plant the information you want the village to hear and understand, coming from reliable or even official sources. You can control the information to your advantage. If you can shape how the village perceives the situation, you might even earn the gratitude of the otherwise troublesome Uchiha bunch." This time, Sensei wore a cunning grin as he posed another question. What if the Uchiha are the true culprits and they use this information to their advantage, planning a more effective attack on Konoha? At this point it was clear to everyone that the two Hokages were trying to see how Kuro's mind worked. The boy glanced at Sensei as if he considered him foolish and retorted, "You already have the upper hand with the information. By revealing that there's a mad Uchiha on the loose, they'll already be on high alert, fearing prosecution for any misstep. So, the next step is to manipulate the situation. Troublesome. He let out a sigh and settled down on the ground. Present the information in a way that appears protective of the Uchiha, while still keeping a watchful eye. They will understand that they aren't in a safe position but won't blame the village for it, as you are giving them a chance to prove their loyalty in their own manner. Avoid making demands and instead create circumstances to test their sincerity. If the Uchiha aren't plotting a rebellion, their actions will demonstrate it. Offer praise when necessary, establish boundaries. And stop pestering me trying to make me do your job for you, troublesome old men. Sensei and Lord Third remained silent as they processed what they heard from Kuro. They seemed to have a silent conversation with their eyes before, instructing me to escort Kuro back home. They then thanked Kuro for his service, before Sensei touched Lord Third and disappeared from their spot. I stood up and prepared to accompany the boy on his way home. Unexpectedly, he spoke up, breaking the silence. You are limiting yourself with your sorrows, Senpai. I didn't turn to look at him, simply responding, you wouldn't understand. Perhaps. But if I were to die, I would want my friends to move on, become badasses, and maybe even avenge me, but most importantly, I'd want them to live wonderful lives, he replied confidently, walking ahead of me. His words gave me pause for a moment, but I quickly shook my head. After all, he was still just a kid, he wouldn't understand. So, I decided to divert the conversation and tease him instead. Who, friends? I thought you only had a girlfriend, little Kuro. I teased, trying to divert the conversation. Izuna isn't my girlfriend, you emo cyclops, he huffed in response. But, I never mentioned Uchiha Izuna, though, I grinned mischievously under my mask, earning a stink eye from the boy. He muttered, troublesome village with troublesome emo cyclops ninjas, as he walked away, and I followed him with one eye, briefly glancing back at the cemetery. Maybe. Just maybe. Kuro had a point. September 7th, year 65, Uchiha compound. Finishing my training, I returned home to find my father's flak jacket hanging on the clothes stand. It was an unusual sight considering how busy he and the other senior members of the clan had been lately. Curiosity piqued. I headed to the kitchen where I knew my mother would be. Mother, is father home? Oh, Sasuke-kun is here too. I greeted her with a smile, noticing my little brother lying in his crib near the table. Oh, Izuna-chan, welcome back. Yes, your father and the other seniors returned from their mission about an hour ago. They were quite exhausted, so your father went straight to bed, my mother replied, stirring the pot on the stove. Seating myself beside Sasuke, I let him play with my finger while I engaged in conversation with my mother. Something felt different within the clan, and I wanted to understand why. Do you know what mission they were on? They've been acting very serious lately, I inquired, sensing an air of tension within our clan. Sighing softly, my mother turned her attention to me. Well, honey, you're a smart child, so I suppose I can share a little with you. You see, there was an intruder in the village recently. This person was spying on the Hokage's student. Surprised by the revelation, I couldn't fathom how someone could infiltrate our village with its supposedly strong security measures. My mother noticed my astonishment and let out a chuckle before continuing. Yes, dear, it was quite a breach. The higher-ups were immediately alerted, she explained while stirring the pot. But what does it have to do with father and the senior Uchihas? I asked, sensing a connection. Sighing again, my mother looked at me with a hint of worry in her eyes. The intruder, you see, was possibly an Uchiha or someone who had stolen a Sharingan and was able to use it. Regardless, it reflects poorly on our clan. I nodded in understanding. It was a dire situation for our clan, as anyone could easily suspect our involvement in sending the spy. Did Lord Hokage punish father and the others for this? I asked hesitantly, my voice barely audible. My mother's expression softened, and she gave me a faint smile before shaking her head. No, dear, Lord Hokage and Lord Third are wise leaders. They did not lay blame on the clan, but they didn't declare our innocence either. Instead, they gave us the opportunity to prove our loyalty and innocence through our actions. They have assigned the clan the mission to hunt down this intruder with a Sharingan, not only to seek vengeance but also to demonstrate our sincerity. Surprised yet relieved, I felt a sense of gratitude that our clan was not directly held responsible for the intrusion. I'm glad that Lord Hokage didn't directly accuse us, I expressed with relief. Yes, Izuna-chan, I've known Minato for a long time. He is a kind man, and I believe under his leadership, the village will prosper, my mother replied with a smile before returning to her cooking. As I played with Sasuke, thoughts filled my mind. Who was this intruder with a Sharingan? Would they cause trouble for our clan? After enjoying a family lunch, my father asked me to meet him in the courtyard. I complied and stood before him, ready to listen. How's your training going, Izuna? He inquired, and I shared an honest account of my progress and the areas I was focusing on. He nodded solemnly, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. Then, he began, You're already 6 years old, and I believe it's time for you to enroll in the academy and embark on your journey to become a ninja. I nodded, understanding that my father was doing his best to train me to become a strong ninja who could bring pride to our clan. I had worked hard, and with Kuro-kun's unconventional training methods and the assistance of his shadows, I had grown faster than I had anticipated. Continuing, my father said, a few members of the clan will also join the academy alongside you. Some of them, like Uchiha Shun and Uchiha Izumi, are considered quite talented. You may get to know them. Once again, I nodded, comprehending my father's intentions. Uchiha Shun and Izumi were likely regarded as geniuses within the clan, and my father wanted me to build connections and gain their support. I was determined to make my father proud and would seize this opportunity to befriend my fellow Uchiha clan members. Suddenly, father furrowed his brows and questioned, I've heard from your mother that you've made friends with a boy named Kuro. An Uchiha shouldn't associate with those who will be left far behind us. Hearing those words, my brows instinctively furrowed, and for the first time in my life, I retorted against my father. Forgive me, father, but Kuro-kun will not be left behind. He is my friend. My father's expression grew even more stern as he admonished me. Izuna, you are an Uchiha, an elite. With your talents, you'll graduate in a year and be on your way to becoming a strong ninja. Can your so-called friend keep up? Will you still be friends with him when you're already a Chunin and he's still struggling in the academy? His words surprised me. I pondered for a moment and found it peculiar. Based on what I knew of Kuro-kun, it did sound like he would prolong his time in the academy to avoid real responsibilities. With a sigh, I responded to my father. Well, yes, Kuro-kun, with his personality, might stay in the academy for as long as he can. But I will still remain friends with him. And I believe that if I become strong quickly, I can eventually catch up to him. My father had a perplexed expression as he softly asked, What do you mean by catching up to him? Raising an eyebrow, I replied sincerely, Well, Kuro-kun is truly strong. Most of the time, he's lazy and avoids training with me. But when he does, he comes up with these unconventional ideas to make me stronger, and his shadows act as impenetrable shields. Whenever I manage to convince Kuro-kun to spar with me, he effortlessly defeats me with his shadows so he can go back to being lazy. I sighed, recalling the difficulties I faced in getting Kuro-kun to engage in training and sparring. The only times I could motivate him were with Aunt Yoshino's assistance or after annoying him for an extended period. It was really baffling to think about how Kuro-kun feared his sweet and kind mother. My father's exprias, he inquired, Izuna, what's the full name of your friend? His full name is Nara Shikakuro, father, but everyone calls him Kuro for convenience, I replied. My father's face underwent several rapid changes of emotions, but it eventually settled on understanding. He turned around and said before walking away, Very well. You can remain friends with Kuro-san. Although I was puzzled by my father's sudden change in attitude, a sense of happiness filled me as I thanked my father. Later that day, I stood in front of Kuro-kun's house and knocked on the door. Aunt Yoshino soon emerged to greet me with a warm smile. Oh, Izuna-chan. It's so good to see you. How are you? She asked kindly. Aunt Yoshino was a genuinely nice woman, just like my mother, but when it came to Kuro. Hello, Aunt Yoshino, I'm doing well. How about you? I'm here to see Kuro-kun, I replied politely, following the manners my mother taught me. But every time I did this, your serious expression is so cute, Izuna-chan. And I told you that you can just call me, Mom, Aunt Yoshino exclaimed, hugging me tightly. I still didn't understand how her mind worked, but I retorted instinctively, that would be inappropriate, Aunt Yoshino. And Kuro-kun says my serious expression doesn't make me look cute. Upon hearing that, Aunt Yoshino chuckled and responded, "What do boys know about being cute? And I'm pretty sure Kuro is just going through his denial phase. Don't worry, he'll get over it someday. Anyway, if you're looking for Kuro, he should be slacking off somewhere in the forest. I would check near the deer." Deciding not to dwell on Aunt Yoshino's remarks about Kuro-kun, I thanked her for the information and prepared to head in the direction she mentioned. However, before I could leave, she stopped me and went to the kitchen to retrieve a bento box. "That lazy kid is probably napping there and hasn't even shown up for lunch. Can you give this to him, please?" Aunt Yoshino requested. I nodded quickly and made my way to find Kuro-kun. I had been to the Nara forest many times before since Kuro-kun had told me I was welcome to come whenever. Aunt Yoshino was always accommodating and had assured me that their door was always open to me. Being near them felt really comforting and warm. Even though Kuro-kun often acted disinterested and lazy, whenever I truly needed him to listen, offer advice, or provide assistance, he never denied me. Even though he would say it was troublesome all the time, he would still help me any way possible. He was genuinely kind-hearted, even though he kept his lazy and annoyed look as a default. I smiled as I thought about my friendship with him and soon found Kuro-kun lying under a tree, observing the deer. He immediately noticed me and I saw him controlling his shadows to disappear as he lazily sat up to greet me. "Yo. Why are you here so early?" he asked lazily. "It's 3 p.m., Kuro-kun. Sigh. Here's your lunch. Aunt Yoshino asked me to give it to you," I said, handing him the bento box. He seemed surprised when I told him the time and lazily remarked, "Huh? No wonder I was feeling a bit hungry. I thought I was becoming an Akamichi. Thanks for bringing it here, Izuna." I smiled and sat down beside him as he began eating his lunch. I glanced at his hair and noticed that it had grown longer, giving him a slightly wild appearance. "Why are you staring at me?" he asked while chewing. Unable to contain my observation, I replied, "Your hair is getting long, you look wild." He shrugged and said, "Cutting hair is so troublesome. Maybe I'll just let it grow." For some reason, I didn't like that idea. Kuro-kun looked good with medium or short-length hair, but ultimately, it was his decision, so I didn't say anything about it. Curiosity got the better of him, and he asked, "So, what brings you here? Don't tell me it's about training again? You troublesome Uchiha." He groaned. Shaking my head, I responded, "No, I wanted to tell you that my father got me enrolled in the academy for next session. I was wondering if you'll be enrolling as well." He stared at me for a moment, likely considering the troubles of attending the academy. Then, with a sigh, he said, "I really don't want to enroll. But I'm pretty sure the moment my mother hears about you or the other kids enrolling, she'll drag me there, even if she has to bind me." Sigh. "So, I'll go out on a limb and say yes, we'll be classmates." Hearing his response, unbeknownst to myself, I gave Kuro-kun a broad smile and exclaimed, "That will be great, Kuro-kun." He appeared slightly taken aback by my enthusiasm, grumbling and looking away, muttering, "Troublesome Uchiha." But I didn't mind. Now I knew that I would be attending the ninja academy with my friend. Hopefully, we would learn a lot and become strong ninjas. I was determined to find a way to protect everyone I cared about, including Kuro-kun. November 21st, year 65, hidden compartment outside the village. "Tell me again. Why am I here?" I groaned, frustrated with the situation as I listened to Aunt Kashina scolding Minato while she went into labor. I knew exactly why I was here, but that doesn't mean I can't complain. "Now hush, child. Kashina loves you like her own son and wanted you to be here as she goes through labor. And don't you want to meet your new little brother?" Granny Bawako, the third Hokage's wife, said with a gentle smile. "You know, after taking care of so many babies, I don't even want to answer that question anymore," I replied, exhaustion evident in my voice as I waited in a corner of the spacious makeshift hospital room. Honestly, if I wasn't a reincarnated person, I would be traumatized by this scene. But even though I acted annoyed, I remained completely vigilant. I had my shadows spread out as far as possible, acting as sensors. Although they couldn't attack or materialize when spread out so thin, I could at least gather information if anything unusual happened. I knew despite altering the events from the original canon and implementing countless security procedures, Obito could still come and cause havoc. For that I needed to have my full focus. Relax, Gaki. You're overthinking it. With all the seals you, me, and Kushina placed around this bunker. I'm pretty sure not even Madara himself could get in, a tall man with long, white mane replied. That was the biggest jinx I had ever heard. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention. Even the pervy sage was here for security. It seemed that the old man third took my warnings very seriously. Well, as long as Obito couldn't enter this room, he had no chance to cause any havoc. After all, using my knowledge and understanding of space from my previous life, along with Minato, Aunt Kushina and the perverted sage, we created this intricate sealing cage to keep him or anyone out. Honestly, I had to admit that this room, with the activated seals, felt like it was in a different dimension. Well, not literally, but it provided a level of security that even Obito's powerful Sharingan couldn't penetrate. Or so I hoped. The pervy sage continued to tease me, remarking, "You know, for someone who complains about being here, you were the most enthusiastic about sealing this room off from the rest of the world. Aren't you the cutest little Gaki trying to protect his auntie and little brother from the big bad out there?" I scowled at the old man as he said that, only to make him laugh as he said, "You're quite the Tsunere, aren't you, Gaki?" He flashed a mischievous grin. If I hadn't made it clear before, let me state it now. I hate this old pervert. If there was a prize for being the most troublesome old man, he would win it hands down. Troublesome old man. However, despite the annoyance of the pervy sage's presence, I remained vigilant and kept my senses sharp as Aunt Kushina endured what seemed like a lion being trampled by an elephant. Honestly, no one reamed like that, and no one should have to witness such a traumatic scene, at any age. I did my best to tune out the screams and curses emanating from Aunt Kushina, instead focusing on my sensory abilities. As time passed, both the perverted sage and I grew increasingly anxious. My shadows remained on high alert, maintaining strict surveillance over Konoha to ensure that nothing out of the ordinary could occur. We were determined not to be caught off guard. I wouldn't let anything happen after all the preparations we had made. And nothing actually happened, everything was fine. With one final, infernally loud scream, Aunt Kushina completed the arduous process of giving birth to a yellow-haired boy, surprisingly devoid of whisker marks. As the baby cried loudly, taking his first breath of air, Granny Bawako, the third Hokage's wife, swiftly attended to the delivery, ensuring the baby was cleaned and cared for before placing him gently in Aunt Kushina's arms. The sight of Aunt Kushina cradling the newborn and beaming with joy was truly contagious. Amidst the overwhelming relief that everything had gone smoothly, Jiraiya approached Aunt Kushina, carefully examining the seal and letting out a sigh of relief, assuring us that all was well and without complications. It was at that moment that I released a breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. Everything had turned out perfectly. There was no Obito present in the room to pose a threat to the baby. No unleashing of the Kyuubi to wreak havoc upon the village. And no Nine Tails incident to worry about. It seemed like a serene moment of respite was finally upon us. However, just as I was about to allow myself to relax completely, I felt a familiar tingle in my shadows, alerting me to something amiss. Locking eyes with the Toad Sage, I reassured Aunt Kushina and Minato, who wore expressions of concern. "Relax," I said, my voice steady and determined. "We'll be right back." Enveloped by the concealment of my shadows, both the pervy sage and I were transported to a remote area outside the village via shadow travel, hidden from prying eyes by their inky depths. There, we witnessed a heated exchange between two individuals, their identities all too familiar to us. The pervy sage immediately braced himself, ready to take action, but I halted him in his tracks. I knew he believed that Danzo was confronting the masked man, convinced of the former's allegiance to Konoha. However, I needed him to witness the truth, to see the reality of who Shimura Danzo truly was. Without sufficient evidence, I would never be able to take care of the parasitic Danzo, and this was the perfect moment to show Jiraiya the darkness of Konoha. Thus, I restrained the pervy sage and silently urged him to observe quietly. We had to gather as much information as possible, piecing together the puzzle that would expose Danzo's evil. "What do you mean they changed the hiding place?" the masked man roared, his anger reverberating through the air. As we observed from the shadows, we noticed the ruins of the cave opening that had served as the fake temporary hospital for Aunt Kushina's delivery. It was clear that the location had been compromised. Danzo, unperturbed by the masked man's outburst, snorted in response. "It seems Hiruzen doesn't trust me enough. He deliberately provided me with the wrong location. I may have underestimated him, he said dismissively. That doesn't matter. You promised me the location of the Jinchuriki, and you have failed. What good are you then? Obito's anger flared, his frustration evident. Danzo scoffed, his disdain palpable. How dare you speak to me like that, you upstart? Merely possessing the Sharingan doesn't make you Madara. I only agreed to cooperate with you due to our mutual interests. Now that our plans have unraveled, I see no reason for you to continue existing. That eye will serve me better anyways. With a forceful strike of his cane, Danzo summoned over a dozen root ninjas, who swiftly engaged the masked man in combat. From our concealed vantage point, the pervy sage and I watched the scene unfold. In my thoughts, I realized that Obito had discovered Kushina's pregnancy through other means, possibly through his own observations or through Danzo's machinations. How long had their alliance been in place? I chided myself for not being more vigilant regarding Danzo. It was evident that I needed to find an opportunity to eliminate him. He was too dangerous to be left alive. Meanwhile, the pervy sage's gaze burned with fury as he grasped the true nature of the situation. The battle began, though it could hardly be called a battle. With his Mangekyo Sharingan activated in the augmented power of Hashirama's cells, Obito became a force of nature, effortlessly dispatching the root operatives with laughable ease. Danzo appeared unfazed as Obito realized there were more root members attempting to restrain him with seals, while Danzo himself launched attacks with his Tonto sharpened with wind chakra. However, Obito deftly dodged Danzo's strikes, simultaneously eliminating as many root operatives as he could before being pushed away by Danzo summoning Baku and using wind jutsus. Even I was impressed to see Obito's prowess from just having a cheat eye and Hashirama's cell. It felt unreal that a deadbeat untalented kid could gain such powers. As the fighting was going on for a few minutes, the village patrol seemed to have noticed it and were converging to this location quickly. Noticing the arrival of additional Anbu forces converging on their location, Obito understood it was no longer in his best interest to remain. His plan had failed, and he needed to regroup and devise a better strategy. With one final kill, he slowly disappeared into a vortex, leaving Danzo with a chilling parting message. Just you wait, Danzo. You will pay for this. On the other hand, Danzo snorted in disdain and signaled his operatives to clean up the aftermath before making his own departure. The pervy sage gestured for me to follow the treacherous Danzo, and I complied without hesitation. This was a golden opportunity to uncover their hideout and gather the necessary evidence. For approximately 10 minutes, we trailed Danzo through a labyrinth of intricate security measures designed to deter anyone who wasn't a root operative. However, my shadows proved superior, effortlessly bypassing the obstacles. Eventually, we found ourselves inside what appeared to be Danzo's office, where another figure awaited his presence. I felt a shift in the pervy sage's demeanor as his gaze fell upon the person in the room. It didn't surprise me, as I recognized him well enough and knew he hadn't yet become a missing nin. Well, was your little plan to cause havoc successful? The man's voice dripped with mockery. Shut up, Orochimaru. It could have gone smoother if you had provided assistance, Danzo growled in response. The snake Sanin simply smirked derisively. I have nothing to do with your ambitions, Danzo. All I desire is to continue my research. We have an understanding of mutual benefit, but I am not foolish. While I harbor no love for this village, I also don't harbor particular hatred. Call me crazy for not wanting to unleash a monstrous Biju in the heart of it like a lunatic. Who are you trying to fool, Snake? Weren't you the one infuriated when your teacher chose a snotty-nosed brat as Hokage instead of you? Didn't you complain to me about it? Weren't you seeking revenge? Danzo retorted, his anger flaring. Orochimaru sneered in response, unfazed by Danzo's accusations. I couldn't care less about being Hokage. What hurt me was Sarutobi-sensei's assessment of me. Cruel, ambitious, and harboring hidden darkness. I am more aware of my true nature than anyone else, Danzo. But hearing such evaluation from someone who was like a father figure, anyone would feel frustrated. But I digress. My life lull forms of ninjutsu and unlock the path to eternal life, rather than prance around in a fancy costume as Hokage. Danzo didn't have much to say in response, opting instead to issue a veiled threat. Be careful, Snake. Who do you think supplies you with your test subjects? What do you think will happen if the information about your human experimentations leak out? One misstep, and you'll face the consequences of offending me. Orochimaru frowned momentarily at the threat before departing without uttering a word in return. Meanwhile, in the shadows, the pervy sage and I witnessed the entire situation unfold before our eyes. To say that we were both taken aback would be an understatement. The pervy sage was undoubtedly shocked to discover the depths of darkness Danzo and Orochimaru were willing to delve into. As for me, I was surprised to realize that Orochimaru hadn't always been completely consumed by madness. Could there have been a way to prevent his complete transformation as a lunatic who wanted Sasuke's body? It was a question that lingered in my mind. Quietly maneuvering through the root base, the pervy sage and I gathered a substantial amount of evidence that would be crucial in our mission to bring Danzo to justice. We stumbled upon kidnapped children from various clans, undergoing training by root operatives. The sight stirred wrath within me, and I wanted to take action, especially upon recognizing some of the Ino Shikacho kids who were believed to be stillborn or faced similar tragic fates. However, the pervy sage restrained me, understanding that the time for action had not yet come. I had to forcibly calm myself down. I looked at the kids and made a silent promise to come back and save them, and I would keep that promise no matter what. With the gathered evidence in our possession, we made our way back to where Minato and the third Hokage awaited. Aunt Kushina was peacefully resting, cradling Naruto in her arms, while Granny Bawako stood guard alongside the midwives and nurses, making sure the mother and child would be safe from any harm. The pervy sage led Minato, the third Hokage, and me to a separate room, where he proceeded to recount everything we had witnessed, showing the evidence we collected. The third Hokage appeared to be in a state of denial, struggling to comprehend how Danzo, his longtime friend, could be involved in such heinous activities. He seemed broken, his spirit shattered. Minato, always compassionate, tried to console the old Hokage, but a burning fire of vengeance flickered in his eyes. The pervy sage, for his part, couldn't fathom the depths of darkness that existed within the underbelly of Konoha. I was contemplating everything that happened tonight. I was trying to find a way to fix the things that needed to be fixing, but suddenly, I heard Minato call my name, Kuro-kun. What is it, old man? I responded by reflex, my tone tinged with annoyance as his interruption disrupted my thoughts. That's when Minato embraced me. I was evidently surprised but let him continue. His gratitude evident in his words. Thank you. Without your help and vigilance, who knows what could have happened? I knew exactly what could have happened, but found it best to just remove those thoughts as I was simply happy to avoid all that. So, I stood in his embrace, silent, knowing that there was nothing I could say to adequately respond. Kushina and Minato had become like family to me, transcending their existence as mere characters in an anime. They were real people whom I had grown to love and respect. However, the somber atmosphere became suffocating, and I couldn't bear it any longer. I attempted to lighten the mood with a joke. If you think I did a good job, maybe you can convince my mom to stop nagging me all the time. Minato chuckled at my remark and replied, well, even Hokages can't win against mothers. I groaned and muttered, what a drag. The group of old men joined in laughter, momentarily alleviating the weight of the situation. January 2nd, year 66, in front of Konoha Ninja Academy. Izuna-chan, wait up, I called out, spotting my clan heiress and newfound friend walking ahead of me. She paused and turned around, greeting me politely. Good morning, Izumi-san. It's good to see you, she responded in her usual formal manner. I still couldn't understand why she was so reserved, even when there were no adults around. I wished she could be more relaxed and comfortable with me, but I brushed off those thoughts for now. Are you excited about the academy, Izuna-chan? I bet you'll be the best student in our batch. You're already so strong. I praised her genuinely. I hadn't seen anyone our age who excelled at shurikenjutsu, taijutsu, and fire jutsu like she did. She was a prodigy in the truest sense. While the clan often praised me for my talent, I felt inferior compared to Izuna. However, since we became friends, training together has helped me improve a lot. Izuna-chan seemed to ponder my question for a moment before responding with a faint smile. She rarely ever smiled. I don't know about being the best, but I really hope I can catch up to him soon, she said with a determined gaze. Ah, there it was again. In the short time I had known her, I kept hearing about this mysterious boy named Kuro, whom Izuna-chan claimed to be stronger than her. She would also disappear from time to time, and Makoto-sama mentioned that she was likely with this Kuro boy. I couldn't help but wonder just how strong he was. From Makoto-sama and Izuna-chan's descriptions, he seemed to be an incredibly talented ninja, a true prodigy. Maybe I could befriend him too and train together. So, I asked Izuna-chan, unable to contain my curiosity, Hey, Izuna-chan, do you think you can introduce me to Kuro-san? Izuna-chan looked at me, and was that a small frown on her face? Then she replied, Sure, Izumi-san. Kuro-kun will be our classmate after all. We should all get along. I nodded eagerly, getting excited at the prospect of meeting another genius in our batch. Soon, we arrived at the academy and received orientation from Lord Fourth, followed by a speech on the Will of Fire by Lord Third. To be honest, it was quite boring. Even Izuna-chan seemed distracted, looking around for something, probably Kuro-san. But it appeared he didn't come for the orientation. I wondered why. Was he sick or something? I asked Izuna-chan about it, and she shook her head, denying that possibility. She simply said, Don't worry, he will be here. One way or the other. I accepted her words at face value and moved on. We were then ushered into our respective classrooms. Izuna-chan and I were in the same class, which mostly consisted of clan kids and children from ninja or wealthy families. As we entered the room, Izuna-chan continued her search, eventually finding a group of kids who seemed to be from different clans. She approached them. Towards the back of the room, by the windows, I noticed 3 boys and 2 girls sitting on 3 long benches. They had distinctive features, and it seemed like they were keeping one spot open beside the window. Izuna-chan went directly to a black-haired boy with droopy, lazy eyes, and asked him directly, Where is he? It was the first time I saw her being so informal. The boy lazily glanced at her, appearing annoyed, until he realized who he was talking to. He straightened up a bit and replied politely, Oh. Izuna-san. Boss isn't here yet. But I'm sure Yoshino-sama will bring him here. The boy seemed a bit scared, honestly. Was he afraid of Izuna-chan? Why would he? Izuna-chan was so sweet and polite, there seemed to be a story there. Thank you, Shikaichi-san. Izuna-chan replied politely before staring at the boy uninterruptedly. Do you want to sit beside the boss? The boy asked awkwardly. Izuna-chan didn't respond directly but nodded slightly. It seemed to be Reedley got up and squeezed beside a chubby boy on the bench behind. There definitely was a story there. I looked at Izuna-chan, puzzled, as she took her seat. She glanced at me with confusion and asked, Did you want to sit together, Izumi-san? Feeling a bit awkward, I decided not to intrude. No, it's all right, Izuna-chan. I'll go sit somewhere else and make some new friends. I smiled at her and bid her farewell, observing as Izuna-chan sat in between the group of clan kids who seemed somewhat afraid of her. I made a mental note to ask them about it later. Well, time to make some new friends. I had made friends with 3 other kids in the class. One was Hana, a girl from the Inuzuka clan known for their connection with Ninken. Then there was Seika, whose parents were brave ninjas who fought in the Third Ninja War. And finally, there was Shin, a quiet boy hailing from the Aburame clan, famous for their insects. As we were getting to know each other, a tall man walked into the classroom, instantly silencing everyone. The man looked around, nodding with a warm smile as he introduced himself. Hello, everyone. My name is Suzuki Haruto. You can call me Suzuki-sensei. I will be your teacher for the coming years. Suzuki-sensei continued, explaining that since it was our first day, we should all take a moment to get acquainted. He set an example by introducing himself as a chunin with aspirations of becoming an elite jonin to protect the village. His introduction set off a wave of enthusiasm as each student eagerly introduced themselves. I listened attentively, trying to remember everyone's names and backgrounds. Just as it was my turn, the sliding door of the classroom suddenly opened, and a smiling woman entered, holding a boy who appeared to be bound in ninja wires. Without hesitation, she dropped him inside the classroom and apologized to the teacher. I'm sorry, sensei. My son was a bit late to wake up. Please forgive his tardiness. Ha ha ha. Please continue with the introductions, and apologies again. Before anyone could react, the woman swiftly closed the door, leaving the class in stunned silence. We all watched with a mixture of amusement and curiosity as Suzuki-sensei went over to help untie the boy who had been dropped off in the classroom. Within moments, he had freed the boy, only to discover that he was fast asleep. It was hard not to chuckle at the sight. Who was this boy, and why did he end up in such a peculiar predicament? Suzuki-sensei let out a sigh of exasperation but managed to rouse the boy from his slumber with a gentle shake. "Hey, wake up. It's time for class," he said. With a groan, the boy slowly opened his eyes, taking in his surroundings before muttering, "Troublesome." It seemed he wasn't too thrilled about being awakened. Suzuki-sensei, slightly annoyed, instructed the boy to find a seat, and to my surprise, he caught Izuna-chan's wave. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was indeed Izuna-chan who was trying to get his attention. Did that mean this boy was that Kuro Izuna-chan had spoken about? My mind raced with questions and speculations, but I didn't have much time to dwell on them as Suzuki-sensei decided it was Kuro's turn to introduce himself to the class. The boy let out another groan, clearly not interested in participating. "Do I have to? It feels so troublesome. What am I even gonna say?" he grumbled. Suzuki-sensei, attempting to maintain his composure, replied with a strained smile, "Why not just tell us your name and your dream?" Kuro nodded, seemingly understanding the minimal requirements. His expression remained flat as he spoke up, "My name is Kuro. And I want to be a cloud. You may now applaud." His deadpan delivery elicited a few chuckles from the class. Without much ado, he made his way over to where Izuna-chan was sitting, looking rather irritated. "Did you show my mother that spot?" he asked her. My curiosity piqued even further. Was he referring to a hiding spot to avoid coming to the academy? Izuna-chan simply smiled in response. Wait, Izuna-chan actually smiled. She then replied the boy with a maybe, before letting the boy take the window seat. And the boy continued to grumble, "You are really troublesome, you know that. That's why I say you aren't cute at all." That was blasphemy. Izuna-chan was really cute. Izuna-chan seemed amused as she said with playful hint, "But Aunt Yoshino and my mother said." "I don't care what they say." The boy groaned and slumped into the desk as Izuna-chan showed mirth in her eyes as she turned towards our teacher who was watching the byplay with frustration. Turning my attention back to the class, the introductions resumed. One by one, the students stood up to share their names and dreams. Finally, it was Izuna-chan's turn. She gracefully got up, capturing everyone's attention. "My name is Uchiha Izuna," she began, her voice steady and determined. "And my dream is to bring peace to the village so I can protect everyone that is precious to me." I couldn't help but smile at her heartfelt words. Izuna-chan truly had an admirable dream, driven by her desire to safeguard those she cared about. But just as the moment was meant to be uplifting, a low mutter disrupted the atmosphere. "Troublesome dreams," came the comment from the side. It didn't take a genius to know it was Kuro once again, raining on Izuna-chan's aspirations. The audacity! I felt a surge of frustration. How could he belittle Izuna-chan's noble ambitions? Who in their right mind aspired to be a cloud? It was beyond absurd. And the thought that this lazy and irritating individual could be stronger than Izuna-chan was utterly preposterous. No, there had to be something amiss. Izuna-chan must be deceived somehow, and I made a silent vow to myself in that moment. I would protect her from this lazy oaf, no matter what it took. But as my thoughts raced, I soon realized something unsettling. They had skipped my introduction. How could they forget about me? July 1st, year 66, Hokage Tower. And Uchiha Izuna is displaying exceptional mastery in taijutsu, comprehension, and bukajutsu. Her understanding of the ninja code is impeccable, and her work ethic surpasses that of a typical 6-year-old. We have observed her proficiency in the academy ninjutsu, as well as a few techniques specific to her clan. Her hand sign speed is already on par with that of a chunin, and she consistently performs without making any mistakes. Based on these factors, the other instructors and I firmly believe that she is more than capable of taking the genin graduation test and excelling in it, concluded the instructor of the freshman batch, proudly presenting his report on the academy's most promising student. I couldn't help but be impressed by Izuna-chan's accomplishments, and I noticed that Lord Third, seated beside me, was equally captivated by her exceptional grades. She had almost perfect scores in her theoretical subjects and outperformed her peers in practical exams by a significant margin. In another time, during a time of war, I might have considered advocating for her immediate graduation and deployment to the battlefield. However, the current era called for a different approach. Both Lord Third and I agreed that allowing the children to retain their innocence a little while longer was preferable. Despite my admiration for Izuna-chan's abilities, a deep sigh escaped me as I knew what most of the young geniuses faced. Kakashi was one of them after all. My sigh caused the Chunin instructor to straighten up, sensing the weight of my concerns. Breaking the silent atmosphere, Lord Third cleared his throat and addressed Suzuki Haruto, the Chunin instructor. Indeed, young Izuna demonstrates extraordinary talent, and her grades indicate that she is ready for graduation. However, we must consider her mental well-being. Has she been evaluated in that regard? Suzuki Haruto, with a touch of pride in his voice, replied concerns. Lord Third. We share the same apprehension, recognizing the potential harm that excessive strength at such a young age can inflict on one's psyche. Both Lord Third and I nodded in agreement, appreciating the importance of a balanced approach. Suzuki continued, therefore, we have been providing her with subtle additional homework assignments and closely monitoring her interactions to assess her emotional maturity. I am pleased to report that Uchiha Izuna is a diligent child with lofty aspirations, and she has formed meaningful connections with some good friends who keep her grounded. Well, almost all of them. There was a slight hesitation in Suzuki's voice when he muttered the last line, hinting at a deeper story. Nonetheless, it seemed he had come to accept their presence and the positive influence they had on her. Both Lord Third and I knew whom he was talking about but decided to get the evaluation from the instructor himself. And who are these friends? If I may ask? I asked with a smile, already knowing this was going to be some good teasing material for one lazy boy. Suzuki Haruto sighed, sensing the impending frustration, before reluctantly answering, sigh. Well, Hokage-sama, Izuna-san appears to be good friends with Uchiha Izumi. They are often seen interacting and even training together. Additionally, Izuna-san frequently spends time with the members of the Ino-Shika-cho group in her class. However, there is one particular Nara who seems to hold a prominent place in her company. There was a hint of distaste in his voice as he continued. Curiosity piqued, I maintained a serious tone as I asked, you don't seem to approve of this Nara boy. May I inquire as to why? Internally, I couldn't contain my amusement, and Lord Third appeared to be trying his best to conceal his own interest. Suzuki sighed again before explaining, of course, Hokage-sama. It's just, while Izuna-san is the top student in her class, the Nara boy, or better to use his full name Nara Shikakuro, is the complete opposite. Sigh. His work ethic is virtually non-existent. He arrives late every day and proceeds to sleep during class. He disregards my lessons entirely, even evading the chalk I throw to get his attention. He is an overall disruptive influence on the class. He continued with growing frustration, he shows no respect for his teachers, giving up without even attempting during taijutsu practice. During shuriken and kunai throwing practice, he carelessly grabs all the weapons with one hand and haphazardly throws them together. And worst of all, he manages to perform well enough that I can't even fail him. He is the most exasperating student I have ever encountered. Ha! 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 The Chunin instructor was left panting after his impassioned rant. Amused, I chuckled awkwardly, realizing just how infuriating Kuro must have been to his teacher. Please forgive me for displaying such unsightly behavior, Suzuki apologized, bowing in remorse. I quickly shook my head to reassure him, indicating that his apology was unnecessary. Meanwhile, Lord Third's curiosity got the better of him, and he requested to see Kuro's academic record, which the reluctant Chunin instructor handed over. As we examined the results, it became abundantly clear why the instructor was so frustrated. If Kuro's actions weren't intentional, we couldn't fathom what else could explain his deliberate behavior. Theory. History 69 100ths, Culture 69 100ths, Mathematics 69 100ths. Ninja Theory 69 100ths, Humanities 69 100ths, Practical. Taijutsu First Grade Academy, Shuriken Art 67% Accuracy. Survival 66 100ths. Obstacle Course 69 100ths. Physical Conditioning Genin Grade Physique. I couldn't help but feel certain that if the teacher had been left to grade Kuro's practical skills without any interference, he would have undoubtedly received the same grades across the board. I needed to have a conversation with him about where he had learned about that infamous number. Who was I kidding? It was probably Sensei. They had grown quite close during their collaboration on the area lock seal. Sigh. However, to my surprise, I found myself sighing in real life, only to notice Lord Third mirroring my exhaustion, his expression filled with weariness. I must admit, Kuro-kun's abilities are quite unique, he remarked. And I can understand your frustration, young Suzuki, but let me assure you, you are doing an excellent job. Try not to stress too much over this. The Chunin let out another sigh and replied, I appreciate your words, my lord. It's just, I fear that someone as promising as Uchiha Izuna may be influenced by that lazy boy. It almost seems like he doesn't care about anything. His dream was to be a cloud. I have classmates and friends who are Nara as well, but none of them are as. So, he struggled to find the right word. Frustrating, I interjected with a chuckle, understanding the sentiment all too well. The Chunin could only nod in agreement, his expression defeated. It's all right, Suzuki-san, I reassured him. You may not be aware, but Uchiha Izuna and Nara Shikakuro have been friends for a few years now. So, you don't have to worry about him influencing her negatively. If it was supposed to happen, it would have happened already. We are highly impressed by your teaching and Izuna's achievements. If she and her family wish for her to graduate early, we will accept it. Please continue guiding the future of Konoha. With as much dignity as I could muster, I delivered my instructions, and the Chunin bowed before exiting the room. It took a few seconds, but then I burst out laughing, unable to contain my amusement any longer. Lord Third joined in, sharing in the lightheartedness of the moment. That boy. My goodness. It feels like a prank Kushina would pull if she had the ability, I chuckled, unable to help but find amusement in the situation. And wasn't that a thought? Kushina had taken Kuro under her wing, teaching him her sealing techniques, and I had heard that she planned to teach him her personal style of kenjutsu too when he grew older. To Kushina, Kuro was like her son. After everything he had done, I couldn't treat him as anything less. Perhaps if he wasn't so lazy, I might consider teaching him my Rasengan and Thunder God techniques. If it's him, he could probably figure out Thunder God in a week. Sigh. I mused, contemplating the idea. Lord Third interjected, bringing our focus back to the conversation. Indeed, Kushina's influence may have rubbed off on him, considering her previous track record with pranks. At least Kuro's approach is passive-aggressive rather than destructive, unlike Kushina. But getting back to the point, he seems to be as intelligent as his father, Lord Third chuckled. I can't say for certain if he's as smart as Shikaku or not, but at his age, Shikaku wasn't as capable as Kuro. Speaking of Shikaku, has he been able to finalize the plan? I inquired, my previous amusement fading as seriousness settled into my eyes. Lord Third's expression turned serious as well. Yes, the plans are nearly complete. Based on our discussions and the information Jiraiya was able to gather, we have enough evidence to prosecute my dear old friends. I still can't believe what I allowed. Even I should be held accountable, the old Kage said, his tone tinged with melancholy. I wanted to comfort him, but after all the things he had allowed, knowingly or unknowingly, I couldn't fully support him. However, acknowledging his contributions as the longest-serving Hokage who had fought for the village, I replied, at least we were able to thwart the more sinister aspects of his plans. Just imagine what could have happened if he managed to summon the Kyuubi in the middle of the village. Based on the documents we've seen, he was plotting a major coup in the future. He may have even attempted an assassination on either or both of us. He is a traitor through and say he claims he does things for Konoha doesn't make it true. The old Kage could only nod, his expression filled with sadness and regret. I broached another sensitive topic, what about Orochimaru? The old man sighed and replied, it was Danzo and I who allowed him to conduct some of his research. But I never imagined he would go leave his sense of morals, engaging in child abduction and human experimentation. I can never forgive him for that. I am certain that Danzo is involved in all of this, as Jiraiya's report stated, but Orochimaru must also answer for his involvement. I sighed, observing the aging Kage as he gazed out the window, his weariness apparent. He appeared older than his years, burdened by the actions of his former companion and student, considering all that he had sacrificed for the village. I stood up, placing a hand on his shoulder and spoke softly, We have to protect what we still have and ensure that such atrocities can never happen again. He nodded, understanding the weight of our responsibility. A comfortable silence settled between us as we watched over the village from the window. Eventually, Lord Third broke the silence, saying, "We are awaiting an opportunity to confront Danzo, ensuring he doesn't escape before facing justice. But if Shikaku's plan succeeds, Danzo will be held accountable for his crimes by the end of this year." I nodded in agreement. We maintained the silence until it was interrupted by a knock on the door. Allowing entry, a secretary ninja brought a report for me. "Hokage-sama, these are the applications for the Chunin exams in the Wind Country." I expressed my gratitude and proceeded to review the list. Every team on the list had already reached the level required to compete in the exams, until I stumbled upon a rookie team. Lord Third noticed it as well and appeared slightly concerned. "It seems Orochimaru wants his star pupil to become a Chunin ahead of time," he remarked. "Sigh, poor girl, I should check on her when I can," Lord Third muttered. After careful consideration, I approved the team's participation. There was no reason to hold them back unnecessarily. Lord Third took a puff of smoke, speaking reassuringly, "Don't worry, Minato. Things will work out, one way or another." I nodded, acknowledging his words, and sighed as I sat back down, immersing myself in the pile of paperwork before me. Only time will tell. Only time will tell. July 22nd, Year 66, Konoha Ninja Academy. Everything looks good. Your graduation exam will be held tomorrow at 10 in the morning. Please try to reach the venue at least 15 minutes early, Suzuki-sensei said with a smile as I handed in my application for early graduation. I bowed and thanked him, but he shook it off and laughed. "Izuna, you are the best student I have ever taught, and I know you will go a long way. Just make sure you remember your roots and don't get too complacent once you become a genin. Always remember to train your basics so you don't make silly mistakes. As you know, a mistake on the job can cost you and your allies their lives or worse," he advised, and I listened with rapt attention. I knew Suzuki-sensei was a good teacher, and he genuinely cared about my development, and for that I showed him the deserved respect. "And finally, I want you to know that I am proud of you, Izuna," he finished with a smile. I was taken aback by his words, feeling a mix of surprise and happiness. As I didn't know how to express my feelings with words, I bowed again to express my gratitude. Suzuki-sensei again shook it off and dismissed me. Leaving the teacher's room, I directly went to find Kuro-kun. I wanted to share the news of my early graduation with him first, and perhaps try to convince him to take the early graduation exam with me. I couldn't comprehend why Kuro-kun held himself back. He was the smartest person I knew, and his skill with his shadows surpassed the level of a student. Yet, he insisted on getting average marks and lazily going through his classes. I longed for him to graduate alongside me, so we could be on the same team. The thought of leaving my first friend behind made me feel a twinge of loneliness. Which reminded me of what my father said all those months ago. "Izuna, you are an Uchiha, an elite. With your talents, you'll graduate in a year and be on your way to becoming a strong ninja. Can your so-called friend keep up? Will you still be friends with him when you're already a Chunin and he's still struggling in the academy?" Those were the exact words my father told me. Those words echoed in my mind. It was never about Kuro-kun keeping up with me. He was always the stronger one. But if things continue like this, he'll remain trapped in the academy. I refuse to let that be the end of our friendship. Maybe, just maybe, I can convince him to graduate early. With determination in my heart, I embarked on a mission to find him. "Oh, Izuna-chan. Do you want to eat lunch with us?" I heard Izumi-san calling me, so to be polite, I approached her and her group of friends and greeted them. "Hello, everyone, I'm sorry, but I'm looking for Kuro-kun, so I can't join you for lunch," I politely declined. Then, I decided to ask if any of them had seen him. "Have any of you seen him?" Izumi-san immediately wore a sour expression, as she had been showing since the day I introduced her to Kuro-kun. I didn't appreciate her attitude, but for some reason, it also brought me a strange sense of relief. It was a conflicting feeling. "Izuna-chan. You should stay away from that lazy good-for-nothing. He's a bad influence," she exclaimed with anger in her voice. I didn't appreciate the way she spoke about Kuro-kun, but this time, it genuinely irritated me. So instead of my usual polite reply, I responded with a hint of venom. "Kuro-kun is and will always be my first and best friend. Please don't speak ill of him. I do not appreciate it. Surprised by my words, she didn't say anything more. She looked a bit guilty. Without bidding them farewell, I was about to search for him elsewhere when a classmate, whom I believed was named Inuzuka Hana, tried to get my attention. I turned back with a frown and asked, "Yes." She seemed a bit shy, but with a hint of determination, she replied, I think you'll find Kuro-kun on top of the roof, trying to help me." But instead of thanking her, my eyes narrowed slightly, and I unintentionally spoke a bit harshly. "And how do you know that?" My earlier thoughts and Izumi-san's recent behavior affected me, so my words came out more aggressive than intended. The girl seemed to cower a bit, but then bit her lower lip and frowned at me, pouting without saying anything. It was at that moment I realized my mistake. My mother had always told me to be polite when asking for something, and I had acted unnecessarily aggressive. It was unbecoming of me. So I bowed slightly and asked again, feeling a bit guilty, "Forgive my earlier behavior, Hana-san, but could you please tell me how you know that?" The girl still appeared upset, but she nodded and replied cautiously, "Well, as you know, we Inuzuka have a very sensitive nose. And Kuro-kun. He has a distinctive musky smell. He smells like deer and grass. Not that it's bad or anything. It's just unique to him. No one else has that kind of smell, and The girl blushed as she described Kuro-kun's scent, and her friends seemed to find her behavior strange as well, as they looked at her in disbelief. Izumi-san seemed to feel nauseous as she stared at Hana-san. But I wasn't really surprised by this information. Most of the time I spent with Kuro-kun, I usually find him near his deer herd that he took care of when he wasn't being lazy. And when he was lazy, he often lay down on the grass. Realizing that my assumption was correct, I smiled softly and thanked Hana-san for her help. "Thank you for letting me know, Hana-san. SSI stance. Please forgive me again for my earlier behavior." She seemed taken aback by my change in demeanor but managed a shy smile in return. "No problem, Izuna-chan. I hope you find Kuro-kun." I guess I had grown so accustomed to his presence that I never realized how distinct his scent was. But I brushed off the thought and expressed my gratitude to the blushing girl once more. With renewed determination, I made my way to the rooftop, where I hoped to finally locate Kuro-kun and persuade him to join me in graduating early. "So you were really here," I said with a small smile as I found Kuro-kun lying on the roof with the Academy Ninjutsu scroll over his face. I knew he wasn't sleeping. I was too accustomed to his presence to be fooled. I heard him sigh and grumble in response. "You're getting more and more troublesome, Izuna. How did you even find me here? How do you keep finding all the obscure places? Do you have Inuzuka nose or something? Sigh. What a drag." Keeping a poker face, I stayed silent and decided not to mention that the Inuzuka girl in our class had been able to track him by his scent. It bothered me a bit, to be honest. After stretching a bit, he finally sat up and looked at me with slight annoyance as he asked, "So, why are you here? We were supposed to meet after classes anyway. What do you need? Did something happen?" His voice, initially annoyed, gradually transformed into one of concern. That was one of the unique aspects of Kuro-kun. No matter how much he grumbled, he had a soft heart and was always willing to help others. I smiled at him and replied, "Yeah, I had something to tell you." He raised an eyebrow, a gesture that conveyed his curiosity. It was his way of saying, "Well, tell me." So I revealed my news. I submitted my application to Suzuki-sensei today. He didn't look surprised and simply stated, "So you're graduating early." It was as if he had already known. I nodded, feeling a bit down. Then he asked, "Why are you in such a hurry to become a ninja? You know that in the beginning, you'll have to do chores and the missions won't be fun, they'll just be annoying." I nodded, replying softly, "I know. But when my father received my report card and read the evaluations from the instructors, he was genuinely happy, as was my mother. He said he was proud of me, that I was the pride of the clan, and that I would bring glory to the Uchiha clan with my performance." Kuro-kun nodded in understanding, absorbing my words. There was a moment of silence between us before Kuro-kun asked, "So what about you?" I looked at him with confusion, asking, What do you mean?" He let out a sigh before continuing, "I mean, how do you actually feel about this? Do you want to graduate just to make your parents happy, or is it something you truly desire for yourself?" His question caught me off guard. Had I been so focused on fulfilling the expectations of my clan that I hadn't truly considered my own feelings? You haven't, Kuro-kun said, as if he could read my thoughts. I gazed at him, perplexed, only for him to snort and clarify, "You're too easy to read." "No, I can't actually read your mind." His remark made me smile, appreciating his ability to understand me so well. I took a moment to reflect on my true motivations for wanting to graduate early. Kuro-kun remained by my side, saying nothing, and we watched the children playing on the academy playground during the recess. After some contemplation, I found my answer and replied with conviction, "I want to graduate to make my parents happy, yes. But I also want to graduate to become stronger. I want to become stronger so that I can protect everyone I care about." I looked at him with determination, prepared for his usual grumbling and his declaration of how troublesome I was. However, to my surprise, he smiled. I stared at his smiling face, completely stunned. Kuro-kun did a lot of things, but he hardly ever genuinely smiled. Whenever he did smile, it was usually a half smile or one of his grins he used for mocking. The only times I had seen such a sincere and bright smile on his face were when he was with his beloved baby siblings, whom he deeply cared for. So, I was truly stunned to be the recipient of that genuine smile for the first time as he spoke. "So, you're following your dream, Izuna. I'm glad. I know you'll be able to achieve your goals." My heart felt funny. It hurt. No, it felt weird. My stomach was twisting. I had never experienced this sensation before. And on instinct, I found myself saying, "You're one of the people I want to protect, Kuro-kun." Expecting his usual response like troublesome Uchiha or troublesome woman, I braced myself. However, to my surprise, he chuckled. Then, he gently flicked my forehead and before replying with a smile, "That's why I say you're not cute at all. Stop being so serious, will ya? And you are 1,000 years too early to protect me, Aho?" I placed my hands on my forehead in astonishment, watching as he stood up and stretched. He then suggested, "Let's celebrate your early graduation with some dango, yeah?" extending his hand to help me up. I stared at him for a few seconds in amazement, before taking his hand as he helped me up. In that moment, my earlier determination to convince him to graduate early with me faded into the background. It no longer held the same importance. Whether or not he graduated alongside me became irrelevant. I knew for a fact that we will always stay friends, and I would make sure to always find him whenever I had free time. As we made our way to the dango stall, I smiled, observing Kuro-kun's back, and softly muttered, "I'll make sure to protect you, Kuro-kun." He didn't hear my words, or at least, I hoped he didn't. Unbeknownst to me, a small smile formed on his face as we walked towards our destination. October 19th, year 66, Nara compound. "Everything all right, dear?" my wife asked as I was changing out of my work uniform. Apparently, my concerns were showing on my face. Letting out a sigh, I replied, "There's some nasty business going on in the village. And if we are not careful, it could become a major issue. It's really becoming a drag." Yoshino hugged me from behind and whispered softly, "I have faith in your brain, dear. I'm pretty sure you'll find a way to handle it and guide Konoha through this." I couldn't help but chuckle at her words, feeling really warm. "Thanks for the support. Sometimes, I feel you have more faith in me than myself." Yoshino giggled and planted a kiss on my cheek, saying, "Well, as your wife, I believe in you wholeheartedly. If there is one thing that I know, then that's to have faith in your Nara brain." She leaned in for another kiss, I guessed, but stopped a bit away from my lips as she said, "Now go take a shower. You smell as bad as Shikamaru's diapers." I wrinkled my nose at her action and replied, "You just had to ruin the sweet moment, didn't you? You troublesome woman." Feeling that I got played, she burst into laughter and left the room, saying with mirth in her voice, "Well, I don't think we need another baby anytime soon. God help, if we get another Kuro, so, deal with it." Her laughter rang as she went away, and I could only sigh again. What a drag, After taking a shower and enjoying a cup of warm tea, I decided to wait for Kuro to return. There were a few important things I had to discuss with him. As a father, I couldn't help but feel reluctant about involving Kuro in the village's affairs at such a young age. It worried me to see him caught up in all the nasty business. He was 7 for Sage's sake. But at the same time, I couldn't deny his natural aptitude for strategy. As my grandfather used to say, to achieve optimal outcomes, push your top-performing assets to their limits. Sigh, what a disgusting and yet accurate thing to say. Kuro had the Hokage's ear and even his opinion by name. It was both a source of pride and concern for me. He was getting into the thick of things way too early. If it wasn't for my friendship with Minato, and knowing how he and his wife treated Kuro, I would never be able to sleep in peace at night. I sighed, contemplating the dichotomy of being a father. On one hand, I worried about Kuro's well-being and the dangers he faced. On the other hand, I couldn't help but feel proud of the lazy boy who constantly finds himself in trouble with his mother. A small smile crept on my lips, as I thought, despite how he ran from lessons on politics, he was giving advice to high-ranking politicians at the mere age of 7, while being damn good at it. Honestly, I somewhat understand how others feel about us Naras, but Kuro is even pushing that boundary. What a drag. Lost in my thoughts, I decided to bring out one of the Nara family traditions, the shogi board. As a member of the Nara clan, we were blessed with an extended IQ that helped us excel in strategy, planning, and research amongst other things. It was customary for the Nara elders to engage in shogi matches to assess the competence of the young ones while help them keep their minds sharp. However, with Kuro, it was always a mess. When he was just a toddler, I was preoccupied with the war, so I had no chance to introduce him to the tradition. And all the other elders failed miserably to get the boy to sit down and play a proper game. The few times they did manage to tie him down for a game, Kuro would either employ a bafflingly stupid strategy to win, or a bafflingly brilliant strategy to lose as quickly as possible, just to escape the elders' lectures. And no, I didn't mean it the other way around. After trying for a while, even the elders knew that it was pointless to try and teach Kuro anything. This particular aspect of Kuro was something my wife truly disliked, the reluctance to learn from others. We all have something to learn from someone else. And that's a rule all Naras abide by, and that's why we observe when we do not engage in a conversation. But Kuro was just different. If it was anyone else who acted like Kuro, people would think that they were arrogant and thought too highly of themselves. But in case of Kuro, that was not the case. From my and others' observations, we have learned that Kuro wasn't really full of himself. Kuro was lazy, to sum him up, but unlike other Naras he wasn't plagued by stray thoughts, he was always free. Also, the boy never neglected himself, as much as that is hard to believe. He trains every day, not excessively like other aspiring ninjas, but smartly in such a way that his enormous amount of chakra was helping him develop his body beyond what it should be. He also studies every day, not extensively as any student should, but thanks to his accelerated brain caused by his extreme imbalance of yin, he can grasp the gist of each and every topic in a matter of minutes, not to mention his perfect recall of the things he reads. His situation is nothing short of miraculous, and somehow, he manages to make it even more extraordinary. While some might see him as a lazy and worthless individual as said in his report card. But those who took the time to truly observe him will discover that Kuro was a bona fide prodigy. The testaments of Kushina and Minato themselves served as proof of that. In a little over a year and a half, the boy had become a master of Fuinjutsu under their guidance. While his deliberate decision to remain at a moderate level during academics is getting him a bad reputation, but the only reason he is doing this is because early graduation would disrupt his nap time and burden him with mundane missions. What a lazy brat. Well, not everyone knowing Kuro's true abilities was a blessing for him in that regard. People simply looked at him and saw a lazy child, unaware of the monstrous ninja he can and will become. After all, they say, a good genius was a living genius. I let out a sigh and decided not to think about it anymore, and set up the shogi board, waiting for Kuro to return home. This would provide us an opportunity to talk, and I could inform him about what was going to happen and what part he needs to play in all this. It didn't take long for him to return home, and I got ready to have a serious conversation. Kuro. So you're finally home from the academy? I asked, more as a statement than a question. Kuro's left eye twitched slightly as he replied, yeah, that's right. I was at the academy. He finished with lazily scratching the back of his head. I sighed once again. Kuro had a talent for lying convincingly, except when it came to his family and those he held close. He couldn't lie to save his life in front of them, and that was one of the reasons he often found himself in trouble with his mother. If I receive any complaints about you skipping class, your mother will have a serious talk with you, I threatened lazily. He and I both knew that I would never follow through that threat. Because the moment his mother hears about it, both he and I will get an earful. What a drag, he chuckled at my remark. Don't worry, there won't be any complaints about me skipping. Can't say the same about napping in class, though, he cheekily added. I raised an eyebrow in exasperation. I knew exactly what he meant. Sigh, that damned jutsu. Who taught you? He laughed and replied evasively. Well, Aunt Kushina is pretty cool like that. But anyways, why do you look so serious sitting in front of the shogi board, Pops? Don't tell me you want me to play? I knew he was simply trying to divert the attention from him about learning a dangerous kinjutsu that could potentially kill him. However, the fact that it was taught by Kushina, and likely with Minato's approval, put my mind at ease to some extent. Kushina would never let any harm come to Kuro, and Minato, as the Hokage, would have carefully considered the risks and benefits of Kuro learning the Shadow Clone Jutsu. So letting that thought aside, I nodded in response to his previous question. That is indeed the case. But I also have some important matters to discuss with you. He raised an eyebrow, his expression turning serious, taking the first move in the game by opening his bishop's path on the board. This is one of Kuro's best traits. He knows when he needs to be serious. I remained calm and initiated the conversation with a dire news. Orochimaru has defected, I stated. Kuro didn't display any surprise, which caught me off guard. I made my move on the shogi board and allowed Kuro to make his next move. Curious at his silence, I asked him, You don't seem surprised. Any particular reason? Well, there was always a chance. You know he is kind of a snake, he replied sarcastically, but his expression remained serious as he looked at me. I nodded, knowing that he was one of the people who read Orochimaru's files. Yes, that's true. But it's the timing of his defection that strikes me as peculiar. It's possible that someone leaked our plans, I stated. Kuro made his next move, contemplating my words. He soon retorted, or perhaps Orochimaru felt that he couldn't gain anything more here and saw this as an opportunity to seek a new place. I pondered his response, finding it plausible. You're right, that's a valid possibility. But there are no coincidences in the ninja world. Now, you're aware that Orochimaru had a disciple, correct? Kuro nodded, his gaze fixed on me, silently asking for the significance of this information. Sighing, I continued, he placed a curse seal on her before leaving her behind, unconscious in tatters in one of his laboratories. The question is, why would he abandon his star disciple if he intended to run away? Kuro seemed to wrestle with his thoughts before responding the obvious but looking uncomfortable. Perhaps she was intended to serve as a spy. Raisin read further, but you don't seem to believe that, even though it is the most plausible explanation. He hummed in contemplation before giving a plausible explanation. That's because it feels more like she was a failed experiment more than a planted spy. Orochimaru is really smart, and if he wanted to plant a spy, I'm certain he would do so discreetly. It's possible he used her as a distraction while he planted real spies or to aid in his escape. His observation aligned with my own thoughts and those of Minato. It was a shrewd assessment, but when considering the man who was responsible, it was a likely thought. As the shogi game continued, it became evident that Kuro's analytical skills were sharp, and his ability to perceive underlying motives was astute. And, from your tone, I guess that you guys haven't captured him. I mean, we have what, 2 Hokages? And pervy sage in the village. Don't tell me that they were unable to capture him? Kuro expressed surprise, questioning the effectiveness of the village's forces. I considered his words carefully before responding while maintaining a serious demeanor. With the presence of the 3rd Hokage, Jiraiya-sama, and the Anbu, we were able to encircle Orochimaru. However, he managed to escape using some unknown method. Kuro saw through my attempt to deceive him and rolled his eyes in response. It was both frustrating and amusing to have a child who could easily unravel my lies. I remained silent, focusing on my next move on the shogi board. A brief silence settled between us as we continued our game. After a few minutes, Kuro broke the silence with a question. So, when will I be called upon? And for what purpose? So, he already knew that he was being summoned. Well, as expected of him, I guess. I shrugged, contemplating my response. We have 3 other seal masters in the village, so they don't require your assistance in examining the curse seal Orochimaru left on the girl. However, Orochimaru's defection has created the perfect opportunity to execute our other plan, meant for our honorable elders. I said the last part with unhidden disgust. Kuro's expression turned serious as he inquired further, so, it's finally happening, huh? Will Old Man Third be able to set aside his emotions against his beloved friends? Realizing he had seen through my previous deception, I let out a sigh. You saw through that, huh? Well, you know, old feelings die hard. He narrowed his eyes at me, clearly not impressed at my attempt to make light of the situation. So, I answered his unasked question. Yes, Minato was on the verge of branding Lord Third as a traitor for his previous actions, but Jiraiya-sama intervened and managed to calm him down. However, Minato issued a threat that if Lord Third acted against the village's interests again, he would be labeled a traitor and executed. The weight of the situation hung heavily in the air. Emotions could become a dangerous liability for a ninja, even if you were the longest-serving Hokage. Kuro sighed, sharing my sentiments. What a troublesome old man. This stupidity of letting Orochimaru go will come back to bite us in the future. Sigh. Well, at least you guys will have me for the next plan against the honorable oldies, and honestly, with me around, there's little Old Man Third can do even if he is consumed by emotions. Unless. He paused, clearly having thought of something drastic. I waited for him to finish his sentence, as it might be something important for the coming events. Unless he somehow sets the alarm before the fire, Kuro finished, looking directly at me, his eyes narrowed. I couldn't help but sigh. What a drag. I'll talk to Minato right away, but for now, be prepared. The council meeting will be held at 10:00 tomorrow, I responded. I didn't have much faith in Lord Third. After how he let Orochimaru go, trust in his judgment was wavering. It was evident that he was struggling with his emotions. Kuro stood up, nodding in agreement. I will set my shadows to work. I'll ensure that the one-eyed bastard receives no information from Old Man Third or any other source. Sorry that we can't finish the game though. He finished with a smirk. I acknowledged his determination with a nod as I watched him vanish into the darkness cast by his shadow. I looked down at the board. I sighed, lamenting the fact that a 7-year-old child was more competent than most adult ninjas. However, in these troubled times, every asset was needed to serve the village. And a Nara who is serious was one of the best assets the village had to offer. I put the board away that was clearly leading to a game without conclusion. I now understood how frustrated the elders must have been. A smirk graced my face as I flickered towards the Hokage tower. Tomorrow promised to be a chaotic affair, and I could only hope it would conclude without any casualties, from our side that is. I was sitting in the classroom, meticulously reviewing the plans to ensure their flawless execution. Among the clones and the original, I had the least demanding task, to simply stay in class and avoid arousing suspicion. It was a super boring job, I tell you, and I loved every bit of it. However, my peaceful focus was interrupted by an aggressive voice from the side. Hey, lazy ass. Looks like the sun rose on the wrong side today. Finding you awake in class, came the taunt. Internally sighing, I immediately recognized the source of the voice. Deciding it wasn't worth my attention at the moment, I chose to ignore it. Oh, are you sleeping with your eyes open? Are you a fish or something? Well, can't deny the fact with those eyes. The voice continued, relentless in its attempt to provoke a reaction. But this time one of my beloved Min friends decided to intervene. Izumi-san, you're being a bit noisy and troublesome. I'm sure boss is just lost in his thoughts, Shikaichi interjected with his characteristic laziness. Shikaichi was becoming one of my personal favorites among my friends. He had a keen understanding of his role and, being a Nara, he could usually decipher my intentions. Most of the time. I should give him a raise, not that I was paying him or anything. Just as I settled back into my task, I was abruptly interrupted again. Shut up, lazy ass number 2. You're no better than him. HMPH, I'm glad Izuna-chan has already graduated and won't be corrupted by your bad habits. Azumi's voice cut through the air, filled with biting disdain. For the first time, I couldn't resist reacting, though not with anger. I found amusement in the thought that without Izuna in the class, Izumi was likely feeling lonely. Poor kid, probably doesn't know how to make friends. Yeah, Kuro is clueless, as he always sleeps in class. She is just like Naruto and Ino, trying to attract my attention by doing weird things. Turning towards her with an innocent smile, I asked, "You said something, Izumi-san?" My attempt at friendliness seemed to only fuel her anger. Strange, was my smile not friendly enough? But I always use that with the toddlers and they love it. "So you've finally stopped ignoring me, huh? You are such an ass," she retorted, her brows furrowing in frustration. I felt amused inside and decided to prank her a bit. So, I looked at her fully surprised, and then asked with a tone of understanding, "Ah, I get it. Izumi-san, you want to become my bully, right?" The class fell silent, all eyes fixed on us. I could see Izumi's face turning red from a mixture of anger and embarrassment at being the center of attention. Unable to bear it any longer, she screeched at me before storming back to her seat, huffing in indignation. Secretly chuckling at the red-faced girl, I turned my attention towards the scene outside the window as I wondered how the other clones and the original were doing. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See.